Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ayla Reynolds. Ayla Reynolds was born in Waterville, Maine on April 4, 2010. A beautiful girl with blonde hair, blue eyes and a captivating smile, she adored music and dancing. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin DiPietro, had a brief romance in 2009, leading to Trista's pregnancy. Though initially surprised, Justin's resemblance to Ayla was undeniable. A paternity test in 2010 made him accept his parenthood. Consequently, in December, he was ordered to provide child support. Trista and Justin didn't have a custody agreement, but Trista, who lived in Portland, had primary custody of Ayla, thanks to an arrangement between them. Only in mid-2011, after Ayla's first birthday, did Justin start having visits with her. He lived an hour and a half away, and the encounters were during the day and very brief. They agreed he could occasionally take Ayla with him, but never overnight. After giving birth to Ayla, Trista became pregnant again with her fiancé Raymond's child. In 2011, Ayla welcomed a baby brother, Raymond Jr. However, Trista's life took a dramatic turn on October 13, 2011, when she had a run-in with Child Services. They issued her an ultimatum: get substance abuse treatment or risk losing custody of her children. Trista opted for rehab, leaving Ayla and Raymond Jr. in the care of her mom and sister, determined to reunite with them and avoid losing them permanently. By October 2011, Justin had met with Ayla around 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista's funeral, on October 17th, Justin and his family suddenly decided to seek custody of Ayla. Justin's mother, DiPietro, got in touch with Child Protective Services and was granted permission to take Ayla into their care. The authorities quickly informed Trista's relatives of their decision. However, when Ayla's aunt was told she had to hand Ayla over, she strongly opposed the decision, alleging that Justin had a history of abusing the child. The officials countered that a father's custody rights take precedence over those of an aunt. Once permission was granted, Justin and his family went to pick up Ayla from her Aunt Jessica's house, but they didn't know the address. Child protection officials provided the location, and a police officer, Charles Weaver, accompanied Justin and his mother to the house. The paternal grandmother waited in the car while Justin and the officer went to the door. When they arrived, Jessica begged the officer not to take Ayla away and warned that she wouldn't give her up willingly. The officer noted that Ayla seemed happy and carefree at first, laughing and playing. However, Jessica pointed out that Ayla's behavior changed dramatically when Justin approached. As soon as Ayla saw her father, she burst into tears and tried to get away from him. Despite this, the officer took Ayla from Jessica and handed her over to Justin. The child struggled and screamed, even trying to bite the officer when she was placed in her father's arms. Jessica told Officer Charles that Ayla was terrified of Justin and that they couldn't take her away from her. Charles explained that he sympathized, but as a police officer, he had to enforce the directive from Child Services, and it wasn't his decision to make. To clarify, if Justin had wanted primary physical custody of Ayla, he would have needed to either reach an agreement with her mother or go through a court process to get a judge's approval. However, as we saw in the custody exchange, there was no agreement or court involvement. Instead, a Child Protective Services supervisor made a judgment, but failed to consider the mother's own arrangements for the child to stay with her relatives during her temporary absence. Before a court grants a parent exclusive physical custody, they typically evaluate the situation thoroughly, including background checks and home visits, which did not happen in Ayla's case. In custody cases, the child's best interest should always come first. However, there was reportedly no evidence to support the decision that was made. Many analysts believe that only an imminent danger to the child's safety could outweigh the stability and continuity of staying with her maternal relatives. If Child Protective Services officials believed Ayla was at risk, it's unclear why they only removed Ayla and not her little brother Raymond as well. The father took Ayla to his childhood home in Waterville, where he lived with his mother Phoebe, 47, his sister Alicia, 24, and her baby daughter Gabriella, who, like Ayla, was an infant at the time. Justin, 25, lived in the partially finished basement, a single large room, while the rest of the family occupied the upstairs area. During Trista's rehabilitation, she called Justin every day to speak with Ayla and ensure everything was going smoothly. She did not perceive any warning signs during these conversations. On October 20th, 2011, coinciding with the 8th day of Trista's treatment, a meeting was held to discuss Ayla's case. Attendees included Child Protective Services members, 2 doctors, Trista, her sister Jessica, and their lawyer, as well as Justin, who participated via phone. This meeting resulted in an agreement that Ayla would be returned to her mother on October 22, 2011, upon Trista's completion of the addiction recovery program. It was also agreed that Justin would bring Ayla to the treatment center for a visit on the 21st. Things were going well for Trista, but the situation was about to take a turn. None of the established agreements were fulfilled, leaving Trista desperate to regain custody of her daughter. She repeatedly reached out to Child Protective Services for assistance in enforcing the agreement, but to no avail. As a result, Trista sought a temporary compromise with Justin. He would continue to care for the child, and she would receive regular visitation rights. On November 12, 2011, Justin took the girl to the emergency room. Following a thorough examination, doctors diagnosed a broken bone in one of her joints, specifically the elbow joint that connects the upper arm to the elbow. Justin claimed the accident had occurred the previous night, on November 11th, stating that he slipped and fell on her while holding Ayla on the porch during a rainstorm. According to him, although she cried, there were no visible injuries, and it wasn't until the next morning that it became apparent she required urgent medical attention. By the next Monday, the orthopedist concluded that surgery would not be necessary, and the injury would likely heal on its own. A week later, on November 26th, the specialist reported during the 3rd medical appointment that the child's progress was as expected. Trista attended this medical consultation to closely monitor her daughter's recovery, unaware that it would be the last time she would hold her in her arms. From that point on, the situation quickly deteriorated. Frustrated by the ongoing disputes over custody, visitation rights, and even her right to talk to her daughter on the phone, Trista decided to take action. On December 15, 2011, she filed court papers to initiate legal proceedings to gain full physical custody of Ayla. On Saturday, December 17th, 2 days later, Justin contacted the police in the morning to report that Ayla was missing from his mother's house, where he was living with his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and his sister Alicia. According to him, they had put the 20-month-old girl to bed the previous night, and when they woke up early that morning, she was no longer there. Trista was on her way to visit her boyfriend Raymond in a coastal city in Maine, just 50 miles from the Canadian border, when she received devastating news. She was dozing in the passenger seat while her father-in-law, Robert, drove. Robert took a call from Trista's father, who informed him that Trista's baby, Ayla, was missing. The news left Robert frozen, and he searched for a safe place to stop the car and wake Trista. Groggy, Trista listened as her father's voice came through the phone, informing her that her baby's whereabouts were unknown. Desperate, Trista changed course, heading to meet the police who were searching for Ayla. The 90-minute journey felt like an eternity to Trista, who frantically called Justin to find out what had happened, but her calls went unanswered, leaving her terrified. When they arrived at the police station, both Trista and Robert gave statements to the authorities. About 30 minutes later, Trista's father joined them, visibly angry and distressed. It turned out that Justin had called 911 that morning at 8:49 to report Ayla's disappearance. He claimed the last time someone saw Ayla was around 10 p.m. the previous night, when his sister Alicia checked on her before bed. However, on Saturday morning, they discovered Ayla was no longer in her crib, but Justin didn't specify the exact time of her disappearance in the call. Justin suspected that an unknown intruder had kidnapped the toddler. The news of Ayla's disappearance spread rapidly, and the authorities quickly launched an investigation. The police chief addressed the media, assuring them that the case was being thoroughly investigated and that their primary objective was to find Ayla by any means. The police searched the house for any potential clues that could lead them to Ayla, facilitating their operation. Meanwhile, the family stayed with friends, and a command center was set up to coordinate the search efforts. On the third day, Monday, December 19th, the FBI was requested to assist in the search operation. By this point, 75 individuals from various agencies were involved in the efforts. The state police seized 2 vehicles from the Petro residence, a 1996 Ford Explorer, owned by Justin, and a 4-door silver sedan, owned by Justin's girlfriend Courtney, who was present on the night of Ayla's disappearance. The search for Ayla expanded, with the FBI's child abduction team conducting door-to-door interviews. 75 officers worked tirelessly, investing 5,000 hours in 10 days, pursuing 330 leads. 50 civilian volunteers and a $30,000 reward aided the effort. Justin initially kept a low profile, avoiding media. However, he made more public appearances, including on the Today's Show, where he addressed the shift in law enforcement's message. He appealed to the perpetrator to return Ayla, emphasizing they had no right to keep her, and she needed to be with her family at home. Justin attributed his delayed cooperation to his initial naivety, having expected Ayla to return within a few weeks. He also stated that law enforcement had advised him to avoid the press, which was partially confirmed by the Department of Public Safety spokesperson. However, the spokesperson clarified that this guidance was only provided at the beginning of the investigation. Subsequently, the police actually encouraged Ayla's parents to remain in the public eye. Justin took the opportunity to respond to the insinuations against him, inviting the TV host to spend a day with him to gain first-hand experience of his situation. While he praised the police's efforts, he acknowledged that some of their methods were unpleasant. He emphasized that the truth remains the same, regardless of how many times he was asked the same questions and accused of lying, believing that the truth will eventually emerge. By the end of January, police discovered Ayla's blood in several areas of the DiPietro house and announced their findings. Although there was not enough evidence to make arrests, 3 adults, including Justin, Courtney, and Elisha, who lived in the residence where Ayla was last seen, were suspects. According to Stephen McCausland, spokesperson for the Department of Public Safety, the forensic evidence contradicted the family's story of what happened, making it highly unlikely that someone could have taken Ayla from her bedroom without one of the 3 adults in the house noticing. 6 months after Ayla's disappearance was reported on May 30th, 2012, the police announced that it was unlikely the little girl was still alive. Trista's family invited journalists into their home to watch the press conference where this news was delivered. Trista broke down in tears, and her grief soon turned to anger as she accused Justin of killing her baby. For Trista's family, learning the details of forensic tests conducted at Justin's family's house was extremely difficult. They already knew that Ayla's blood had been found, and they had been told the amount was equivalent to 25% of her blood volume. However, they had not seen the evidence until January 2013, when everything was finally revealed to them. The investigation uncovered disturbing evidence. The baby seat in Justin's 1996 Ford Explorer had Ayla's blood on the left shoulder strap. Dried gastric fluid was found on the back seats. In Ayla's bedroom, blood was discovered on her princess pink sneakers next to her crib, as well as on the face and arms of her doll. Investigators believed Ayla might have tried to wipe blood from her mouth with her toy. Additionally, a blood stain was found on the living room sofa. Most of the blood traces were found in the basement. On the mattress where Justin slept with Courtney, a pool of Ayla's blood was discovered. Nearby on the bed, vomit and an unidentified pink fiber, possibly from a toy, were found next to the sneakers stained with Ayla's blood on the tongue and inside. Additionally, splashes of blood were found on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls, with some of the splashes on the walls matching Ayla's height. An expert concluded that some of the blood drops, about the size of a dime, were indicative of trauma caused by a blunt object. The experts also determined that some blood spatter patterns in the house might have been coughed up by Ayla, suggesting that she had both internal and external injuries. The police found that bed linens had been used to clean up Ayla's blood. This information was horrific for Trista and her family to learn, and they soon discovered even more disturbing details. Officers warned Trista about disturbing evidence, then showed her luminol test results revealing hidden bloodstains at her house. She was devastated, fled the station in panic, and became convinced Ayla was murdered, declining to see more evidence. Justin showed no emotion when police showed him and the DiPietro family evidence months prior. The family they stayed with during the relocation also declined to see photos, citing disinterest. Justin's girlfriend, who was with him the night Ayla disappeared, had the same indifferent reaction to the findings. Trista spoke out 8 months after the 2013 ordeal, slam-dunking Justin, Alicia, and Courtney for being free and unbothered. In a blistering letter, she shared evidence and photos, refusing to wait for justice, vowing to revive public interest with or without law enforcement's backing. In 2016, journalists visited Justin's mom's house, meeting Alicia, Ayla's aunt. Queried about blood evidence, Alicia blamed Ayla's lactose intolerance, citing vomiting. However, internet research showed this was unlikely, as typical symptoms are gas, bloating, and diarrhea, not vomiting blood. In 2017, a judge granted Trista's request and formally declared Ayla legally deceased. The ruling stated that Ayla's death likely occurred on or around December 17, 2011, the day her father, Justin, reported her missing. With this ruling in place, Trista and her legal team pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin, alleging that his intentional and unlawful actions led to Ayla's death, and that he subjected her to pain, terror, and physical harm prior to her passing. Trista held a press conference, confronting her deceased daughter's father after he denied wrongdoing in a lawsuit. She questioned his conscience, saying she saw the truth in his eyes and believed he knew it was a problem. In 2023, a judge granted Trista's request to add Phoebe and Elisha as defendants in the wrongful death lawsuit. The 3 defendants now face civil charges for wrongful death, conscious pain and suffering, and unlawfully interfering with a deceased person's body. Additionally, Justin is charged with breaching his parental duty to care for a minor child. Trista and her lawyer knew they wouldn't get money from Justin. They wanted to uncover the truth about Ayla's disappearance. It was suspicious, with Justin driving to Portland and back, claiming to search for Ayla, but never contacting Trista or her family. He had bought a $25,000 life insurance policy for Ayla weeks before. It's bizarre that Justin stayed at a friend's house while detectives investigated Ayla's disappearance. This is especially surprising, given that Justin had barely been involved in his baby's life during the 9 months of pregnancy, and most of her life. Trista also shared that she received strange messages from Justin in the week after he took Ayla, in which he expressed fear that someone might kidnap or snatch her. He had made similar comments around December 11th, 6 days before her disappearance was reported. However, after Ayla went missing, those messages took on a threatening and confusing tone. Trista admitted that she had always been perplexed by their meaning. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Johnny Berry. Johnny Berry was born on August 26, 1983, and grew up to be a happy and friendly person with a large social circle and a love for parties. During her school days, she was an active member of the local cheerleading team. After completing high school, Jonia enrolled at East Tennessee State University to pursue a degree in psychology and criminology. It was during this period that she met Jason White, and they began dating. The couple got engaged just before graduating in late 2004. At the age of 21, Jonia decided to pursue a master's degree in psychology, which led her to temporarily relocate to Knoxville for her studies. While in Knoxville, she worked part-time at a children's educational center, where she discovered her passion for helping kids. Meanwhile, Jonia's fiancé, Jason, was studying law in a different state. Despite the distance, they remained close and began planning their wedding in Knoxville. Initially, Jonia stayed with her friend Jason Amami, who had also attended college with her and later moved to Knoxville. They shared a 2-bedroom apartment, and Jason allowed Jonia to stay there until she found her own place to live. Jonia had 2 part-time jobs, one at a jewelry store and the other at a children's hospital. On the Sunday night of December 5th, after finishing her shift at the jewelry store, Jonia went to the mall to do some Christmas shopping. Later, she returned home and spent her evening wrapping presents for the children at the educational center, chatting with her neighbor, and then retreating to her room. Before going to bed, she had a phone conversation with her boyfriend. Around 4 in the morning, Jason Amami was awoken by a scream from a woman. At first, he thought Jonia was having a nightmare, so he went to her room to check on her. However, he was shocked to find a stranger wielding a knife. The intruder attacked Jason, and they engaged in a fierce struggle. Eventually, Jason managed to fend off the attacker and made a dash for the door. He rushed out of the apartment and ran to the nearest convenience store, almost a kilometer away, to call for help. When the store clerk saw Jason, who was covered in blood, they immediately called 911. Jason explained to the police what had happened when they arrived at the scene. At their apartment, the police found Jonia lying in the hallway that connected 5 apartments. She was still alive, but barely conscious. When the police questioned her about the attacker, she could only provide weak clues. The police searched the entire building and the surrounding area, but were unable to find the attacker. They rushed Jonia to the nearest hospital, where despite the doctor's best efforts, they were unable to save her. The doctor reported that she had suffered more than 20 stab wounds, making survival highly unlikely. Jason had 8 wounds from the attacker. Although only 1 was critical, he received medical attention, and his life was no longer in danger. Meanwhile, the detectives began investigating the crime scene. They discovered blood in the hallway, indicating that Jonia had attempted to seek help from her neighbors, but none of them had opened their doors. Next to Jonia's room, the detectives found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife that belonged to Jason, which the attacker had used with such force that it became bent and damaged. The police discovered blood near the back door of the apartment and on the stairs leading to the street. As Jason and Jonia had exited through the front door, detectives believed the killer likely escaped through the back door in Jason's room. Another clue was found, a partial footprint, possibly left by the attacker when they followed Jason and attacked him. The brutal nature of Jonia's murder led police to suspect a personal motive. Initial investigations focused on Jonia's boyfriend, despite him being approximately 1,000 kilometers away from Knoxville. However, friends and family testified to their wonderful relationship, and he had no apparent reason to commit such a heinous crime. He learned of Jonia's death when her mother called him at 10 a.m. and claimed to have fainted and taken a long time to recover. In his incapacitated state, he required a neighbor's assistance to book a plane ticket and pack his suitcase. After carefully verifying his alibi, investigators concluded he couldn't have physically traveled to Knoxville and back by morning, thus ruling him out as a suspect and shifting their attention to Jonia's neighbor. In contrast to Jonia's boyfriend, who had a solid alibi, this particular neighbor did not, which raised suspicions that he might be the perpetrator. Many friends and family members of Jonia suspected him, with some believing he could be the killer, and others accusing him of leaving Jonia behind as he fled the apartment. The suspicion was so deep-seated that Jonia's parents didn't even want him to attend her funeral. After Jason was released from the hospital, investigators started questioning him. He maintained his original story, stating that he had heard screams, seen an unfamiliar man, and was attacked after successfully fighting off the attacker. Jason rushed to the front door, went out into the street, and sought help from the neighbors. He thought Jonia had also escaped from the apartment because he could no longer hear her screams. However, the police had doubts about the truth of this testimony. Doubts about Jason initially stemmed from his injuries. Although he had 8 wounds, 7 were superficial, and the 8th on his right arm could have been sustained while either defending himself or attacking someone. Furthermore, the absence of forced entry into the apartment suggested that the assailant might have already been inside. Jason claimed to have taken out the trash through the back door that night, but he couldn't recall whether he had locked it. The detectives pressed him further, focusing on which door he used to exit the apartment onto the street. Jason maintained that he had left through the front door, but the police suspected he was lying. If Jason had actually exited through the back door, it would account for the bloodstains near the door leading to the stairs, thereby heightening suspicions against him. Additionally, the police accused him of using and selling illegal drugs and of becoming aggressive when he couldn't get his fix. Jason denied all these allegations, but the investigators continued to level various charges against him. After spending several hours at the police station, the detectives asked Jason to take a polygraph test, and to their surprise, he accepted. An expert was brought in to administer the test, during which Jason was asked a series of leading questions. When the test was over, the investigators told him that he had failed, suggesting that his responses were false. This news caused Jason to become extremely upset, shouting that he was innocent and had no involvement in the crime, that his life was in danger, and that the real perpetrator was still at large. Despite his protests, the detectives remained skeptical. Police couldn't charge Jason due to lack of evidence. Lab analysis of the murder weapon revealed 3 DNA samples: the victim's, Jason's, and an unknown man's. The unknown DNA was also found elsewhere in the apartment. A bloody fingerprint on the knife handle didn't match Jason's. These findings suggested another person was present, but the unknown DNA didn't match any in the database. Despite this, public opinion still doubted Jason's innocence. Jason developed PTSD after a flawed polygraph test led to false accusations. In reality, Jason had severe lung and neck injuries with little hope of recovery. However, due to police report inaccuracies, his treatment was only 25% covered, leaving him in financial distress. After the police stopped suspecting him, they started questioning Jason as a witness. Based on his account, they managed to create a rough description of the attacker. However, the situation was complicated by the fact that Jason didn't get a clear look at the assailant's face. The apartment was dimly lit, and the attacker had pounced on him as soon as he left the room. In Jonia's room, the investigators made an intriguing discovery. A cap was found near the back staircase, along with discs and a stereo player. At first, they thought these items might belong to Jonia or Jason, but Jason denied any connection to them, claiming they were not in his apartment. This led the investigators to suspect that the killer might have left them behind. The police released a rough sketch of the suspect to the media, and after it was published, they received hundreds of leads. Many people reported individuals who vaguely matched the sketch, prompting the detectives to investigate each of these leads. One lead in particular caught their attention: a group of local teenagers known to break into houses to steal. One of these teenagers, 19-year-old Michael, bore a resemblance to the suspect's sketch. The police launched a search for Michael, which was made more complicated by the fact that he was already wanted for theft. With the possibility of his involvement in murder, 2 police units joined the search for Michael. They tracked down Michael and brought him in for questioning about the murder. As soon as he was in custody, the investigators turned their attention to his shoes, which had a tread pattern that was similar to the footprint found at the crime scene. They took DNA and fingerprint samples from Michael and sent them to the lab for analysis. While waiting for the results, they questioned him, and he made a surprising confession. Michael claimed that he and a friend had broken into Gia's apartment that night, intending to steal valuables. However, he said his friend had taken a knife and attacked Gia. But the detectives soon grew suspicious of Michael's story. The details he provided didn't match the evidence they had collected, and there was no sign of two strangers at the crime scene. The lab results only added to their doubts. Michael's DNA and fingerprints didn't match those found at the murder scene, and his shoes didn't match the tread pattern found in Gia's room. In the end, the police concluded that Michael had made up the whole story. It may seem strange, but it's not uncommon for people to falsely confess to high-profile crimes, often to get attention or a reward. It's unclear what motivated Michael, but his confession turned out to be completely false. Following the murder, investigators questioned over 1,000 potential suspects and collected around 400 DNA samples. However, none of them matched the evidence found at the crime scene. In an effort to encourage people to come forward with information, a reward was offered early on in the investigation. As time went on, the reward amount increased each month. By December 2005, a year after the murder, the reward had reached $60,000. The state governor also contributed an additional $20,000 from his own funds, drawing even more public attention to the case. Despite the many leads, all of them ultimately led to dead ends. As a result, the case remained unsolved for several years. In 2007, the victim's parents took action seeking changes in state legislation. They found it surprising that the murderer's fingerprints and DNA were not in any databases, considering the brutality of the crime. The parents refused to believe that this was the perpetrator's first offense. They later discovered that, according to Tennessee laws, fingerprints and DNA samples were only collected from people who had been convicted of a crime. Jason's parents were determined to bring about change. They took an active role in shaping a new law that required the collection of DNA samples from all individuals arrested for violent crimes. The authorities backed this initiative, and the law was passed in May 2007. 2 months later, a significant breakthrough occurred in the case. The police arrested 22-year-old Taylor Lee Olson for violating his probation terms. Olson had a lengthy criminal record, mainly involving theft, check forgery, and auto theft, with multiple previous arrests. Remarkably, despite his history of run-ins with the law, his fingerprints and DNA had never been collected. Olson lived with his girlfriend and their newborn daughter, but his criminal activities persisted. It was revealed that Olson had already come to the investigators' attention 5 months earlier when they received a tip about his possible involvement in the murder. However, for reasons unknown, the police had not pursued DNA samples for analysis at that time. Nevertheless, with his new arrest for probation violation, they finally decided to question him about Jonia's case. Olson eventually confessed his involvement in the murder and willingly provided a DNA sample. When the lab results came in, it was confirmed that Taylor's DNA was a complete match with the sample found in the victim's apartment. Following this, they collected his fingerprints, which also matched the fingerprint on the murder weapon. Olson was subsequently arrested, and detectives began to question him. Initially, Olson said he was not guilty, but he eventually decided to confess to his actions. Taylor claimed that on that night he had intended to steal Jonia's car and had entered her apartment through the back door to find the car keys. When he entered her room, she woke up and began screaming. In response, Olson grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed her multiple times. However, he insisted that he hadn't intended to kill anyone and that it had all occurred accidentally. Detectives had doubts about the truthfulness of some details, and leaned towards believing that Taylor had premeditated the murder. It was possible that he had been stalking the victim for some time, indirectly supported by the fact that Jonia's friends had reported someone following her in a car at the time. No evidence was found to substantiate this, but after Olson's arrest, it seemed increasingly plausible. Despite this, there was little doubt about his culpability, as his DNA and fingerprints were present on the murder weapon, strongly indicating his involvement. Olson's trial was slated to commence in mid-2008, and by that point, he had already retained a lawyer. Apparently, his legal counsel advised him to retract his confession, and Taylor presented a new version of events to the detectives. Now, he claimed that he had entered Jonia's apartment with his friend named Noah Cox. According to this revised account, when Olson entered Gia's room to retrieve the car keys, she allegedly woke up, seized a knife, and stabbed him several times. Olson then fled through the back door, while his friend entered Gia's room, disarmed her, and killed her. This new narrative raised suspicions among the police, as they found no fingerprints or DNA from other individuals at the crime scene, making it appear unlikely that anyone else was involved. Detectives awaited the start of the trial, but it never occurred. On March 28, 2008, Taylor Olson took his own life in his prison cell. Alongside him, several suicide notes were discovered, addressed to his family, Joan, his relatives, and the police. In the note to the detectives, he once again alleged that his friend Noah Cox was the actual perpetrator and also apologized to Gia's family and his own. Detectives continued to believe that Olson was responsible for the murder and repeatedly questioned him, but they found no evidence implicating him. Gia's parents also remained skeptical, believing that Olson was lying. In their view, if Taylor was truly innocent, he wouldn't have taken his own life. It seemed more likely that he simply did not want to spend the rest of his life in prison. Furthermore, for several months following his initial confession, Olson had consistently maintained that he had entered the apartment alone and that there was no one else with him. The sudden change in his story to shift blame onto his friend raised further doubts. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jessica Camilleri. Jessica Camilleri, the second daughter of Rita and Vince, an Australian Maltese couple, was born with a mild mental disability. Her IQ was between 55 and 60, placing her in the bottom 1% of the population. People with mild intellectual disability like Jessica learn to communicate and express themselves, but at a slower pace than others. They may take longer to develop skills like speaking, reading, writing, and math, but they can still adapt to daily life. Due to her condition, Jessica was slow in reaching developmental milestones like walking, talking, and coordinating movements. She started school much later than her peers, which made her a target for teasing, discomfort, and bullying from her classmates for being different. As a result, Jessica developed stress, anxiety, and anger, particularly towards females. She also struggled with intermittent explosive disorder, characterized by sudden, repeated outbursts of impulsive, aggressive, and violent behavior, as well as angry verbal eruptions that were disproportionate to the situation. At school, Jessica exhibited aggressive behavior towards both students and teachers, including a notable incident where she punched a male student and refused to release her grip, leading to her indefinite suspension and subsequent confinement at home under the care of her mother, Rita, who received a disability pension to support her. Jessica's behavioral issues were symptomatic of her intellectual disability and struggled with irrational outbursts of anger. Furthermore, she was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, a chronic brain condition that affects millions of children worldwide, making it challenging for her to regulate her behavior. In addition to these conditions, Jessica also suffered from severe bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and autism spectrum disorders, which impacted her judgment, self-awareness, and empathy towards others. She had obsessive tendencies, such as fixating on her three favorite numbers, 2, 3, and 5, each of which she associated with a specific color, yellow, green, and purple, respectively. Jessica would often repeat these numbers to generate random phone numbers, which she would then use to call and talk to men. In one instance, starting in 2018, she began harassing the staff of a meat company in Daylesford, England, even going so far as to threaten the owner's family, claiming she would decapitate them with a chainsaw. Jessica had a persistent fascination with horror movies, particularly the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She would spend hours rewatching disturbing videos, and this obsession often led to furious outbursts when her mother, Rita, tried to restrict her access to these films. Jessica and her mother lived together in a house in St. Clair, a suburb of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Jessica's father, Vince, had divorced Rita during her teenage years due to the strain their daughter's behavioral problems had put on their marriage. Jessica struggled with low self-esteem and a childish, naive outlook, but she also displayed strong narcissistic tendencies. Deep down, she felt she was one of a kind and entitled to special treatment due to her mental disability. This occasionally led her to be exploitative and egocentric. Despite this, Rita remained devoted to caring for her daughter, acknowledging her issues, but feeling a strong sense of responsibility to look after and protect her. Rita even went so far as to reach out and apologize to one of the recipients of Jessica's harassing phone calls, confessing that she was at a loss for how to manage her daughter's behavior. Jessica was very close to her mother, who dedicated her life to taking care of her and meeting all her needs. Instead of sending her to a psychiatric institution for full-time care, her mother chose to keep her at home. In fact, Rita's life revolved around Jessica. The tragic event of July 20th, 2019 was not a standalone incident. In the 6 years leading up to it, Jessica had been convicted twice for assaults that caused actual bodily harm. She had also physically attacked her aunt and her sister's mother-in-law by pulling their hair. But she avoided jail time and was always placed in the care of her mother, Rita, the one person who could tolerate her behavior. Jessica had also exhibited aggressive behavior towards women she encountered in the streets and shopping centers, lashing out at those she perceived as looking at her wrongly or making her feel ashamed. On one occasion, she was even barred from a doctor's office after becoming violent towards another patient in the waiting room due to paranoia. In early 2018, Jessica's aggressive behavior continued when she attacked a nurse during a hospital visit with her mother, Rita. As a result, she was admitted to a mental health unit for 9 days to treat a severe episode of mood disorder. She was prescribed lithium for her supposed bipolar disorder, along with antipsychotic medications. However, by the end of 2018, about 6 months before the tragic event, Jessica had stopped taking her medication and instead began using natural remedies to manage her conditions. Rita was at her wit's end and paid $2,500 to a medium on Queen Street in St. Mary's, a western suburb of Sydney, in a desperate bid to exorcise the demon she believed was possessing her daughter, Jessica. Despite her family and friends warning her about the dangers of living with Jessica, Rita remained adamant that her daughter wouldn't hurt anyone. According to Christy, Jessica's older sister, their mother Rita had a heart of gold, always putting others before herself, including Jessica, who continually refused to seek professional help. Rita's sister often voiced her concerns that Jessica might harm her, recognizing Rita's unconditional love for her daughter. However, Rita's motherly love made her oblivious to these warnings, even on the day before the tragic attack, when she had to take Jessica to a police station due to her threatening calls to strangers. Jessica felt humiliated by her mom in a parking lot after visiting her sister due to a stranger's brief presence. Later, when her mom refused to order food from Red Rooster, Jessica called the restaurant 3 times. She then demanded her mom call a doctor, but Jessica's erratic behavior scared him off. At wit's end, Rita called an ambulance to take Jessica to a mental health facility. On the night of July 20th, 2019, Jessica's most severe episode of rage was about to unfold. In a brutal attack, Jessica dragged her 57-year-old mother Rita by the hair to the kitchen of their own home. There, she savagely attacked Rita with 7 meat cleavers, 4 of which broke under the force of her blows. In total, Jessica stabbed Rita over 100 times in the head and neck, driven by a morbid curiosity fueled by her daily obsession with horror films. The autopsy revealed the full extent of Rita's injuries, which included massive trauma to her head and neck, and death by multiple stab wounds that resulted in decapitation at the second vertebrae in her upper neck. Furthermore, Rita's body showed over 90 defensive wounds, indicating that she was conscious for a significant part of the attack. Enduring extreme physical pain and emotional terror at the hands of her own daughter, whom she had lovingly cared for. Jessica's 4-year-old nephew, the son of her older sister Christy, was present during the attack. The boy had been in Rita's care for a few days due to Jessica's apparent improvement. However, he was forced to witness Jessica repeatedly stabbing his grandmother and ultimately decapitating her. When the boy tried to intervene, Jessica attacked him, causing a minor head injury. The traumatic scene was so disturbing that the young boy began vomiting in response. Jessica called the emergency number from her mother Rita's cell phone, confessing to her murder and claiming self-defense, stating that Rita had attacked her first. However, this was not true, and Jessica had actually committed the brutal act. In reality, after killing her mother, Jessica panicked and repeatedly stabbed Rita's lifeless body, ultimately decapitating her and inflicting over 100 wounds. She then dumped Rita's head in a nearby neighbor's front yard. When the police arrived at their St. Clair, Sydney home, Jessica was outside, her clothes stained with her mother's blood, holding a water bottle. She showed no remorse for her actions and was more concerned about her own fate. Jessica asked the police officers and detectives if it was possible to bring someone back to life after decapitation, believing in the possibility of medical miracles that could reattach her mother's head. The police officer responded that this idea was unrealistic, but Jessica insisted, thinking that doctors could perform miraculous surgeries and reattach her mother's head. She also inquired about the potential consequences of her actions, specifically asking if she would face the death penalty. Upon learning that Australia does not have capital punishment, Jessica felt relieved. Furthermore, Jessica confessed to the police that the idea of decapitating her mother came from the horror movies she obsessively watched. A police officer's body camera recorded a chilling conversation at the crime scene on July 20, 2019. At 11:43 p.m., the first responders described the scene as one of the most horrific they had ever seen. The next day, July 21, 2019, Jessica appeared in court but didn't apply for bail. A friend explained that this was not surprising, as Jessica probably didn't understand the bail process. After a trial that highlighted her long history of mental illness, Jessica was found guilty of manslaughter in December 2020. She had pleaded not guilty to murder due to her disability. In early 2021, Jessica was sentenced to a maximum of 21 years and 7 months in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 16 years and 2 months, which would be September 19, 2035. The prosecutor argued that Rita's brutal murder was the culmination of a lifetime of escalating violence by Jessica, which started with hair-pulling and eventually led to a deadly explosive attack. The prosecutor also stated that Jessica posed a moderate to high risk of reoffending and remained a danger to the community. Christy, Jessica's older sister, said that Jessica had killed and butchered their mother, and for that, she could never forgive her. However, Rita's sister held a different view, hoping that Jessica would get the help she needed and that Rita could finally rest in peace, knowing that Jessica was being cared for by a system that had failed her when she was alive. The judge presiding over the case offered counseling services to the jury members, recognizing that the disturbing evidence they had heard could haunt them long after the trial. The judge also admitted that selecting a jury for Jessica's trial was difficult, as many people were reluctant to participate in a trial involving such a disturbing crime. The judge described Rita's murder as one of the most brutal and cruel cases of homicide a court could encounter, emphasizing that the crime's severity was exacerbated by its occurrence in the victim's own home. Jessica's lawyer revealed that his client had expressed regret in a letter to her family after the crime. In the letter, Jessica accepted responsibility for her mother's death, acknowledging that Rita had not provoked her and taking blame for her actions. However, one of the psychiatrists who evaluated Jessica noted that she struggled to communicate through social gestures and displayed a relatively flat affect. The psychiatrist found no evidence of schizophrenia or hallucinations in Jessica. The conclusion was that Jessica's risk factors could only be managed in the long term with a comprehensive mental health support plan. Since entering prison, Jessica has persistently caused trouble. Only 2 months after her arrival, on September 9, 2019, she got into a fight with another inmate over food trading and threw a teacup at them. Although she was charged with assault in local court the next day, she did not receive any additional punishment. On October 14, 2019, Jessica attacked another inmate, which resulted in her being placed in solitary confinement in her cell for 5 days. On November 3, 2019, she disobeyed an order, and on July 31, 2020, she damaged property, incurring a fine of $200 Australian dollars. Jessica was involved in another assault on November 21, 2020, which led to her being placed in solitary confinement for 7 days. In January 2021, she was convicted of common assault again, but did not receive any further punishment. Jessica has explained her behavior, saying that other prisoners make her life difficult, regardless of what she does or where she goes. She has also stated that prison life is tough and very different from the outside world. On May 15, 2023, Justice Peter Hamill of the Sydney Supreme Court rejected claims that Kaleri's original sentence was too harsh and that the judge who sentenced her had misjudged the severity of her crime. However, Justice Hamill did rule that Kaleri should be resentenced, a decision supported by Justices Christine Adamson and Richard Kavanaugh. The basis for this decision was Kaleri's bizarre behavior, including walking into the street with her mother's head and asking emergency responders if they could reattach it, which demonstrated how out of touch with reality her actions were. After considering the opinions of multiple psychiatrists and a psychologist, Justice Hamill found that Kaleri's intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder meant she only had a basic understanding of what was morally wrong. As a result, he ordered that she be resentenced to 16 years in prison, with a minimum of 12 years before being eligible for parole. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Natalee Holloway. 18-year-old Natalee Holloway, who disappeared while on a trip to Aruba, an island in the southern Caribbean Sea near Venezuela. In May 2005, a group of 124 students from Mountain Brook High School, accompanied by 7 chaperones, traveled to Aruba to celebrate the start of their adult lives. The students stayed at the Holiday Inn and had access to beaches, palm trees, restaurants, and local entertainment venues. They spent 5 unforgettable days on the island, enjoying themselves with swimming, sunbathing, dancing, and partying. However, on the day of their return, Natalee Holloway was nowhere to be found. Her belongings, phone, and passport were still in the hotel, but she had vanished. Her mother, Elizabeth Twitty, was the first to raise the alarm and reported her concerns to one of the chaperones. Elizabeth recalled that at that moment, her heart sensed something was wrong, as her daughter was obedient and always stayed in touch. Natalee's mother and stepfather immediately flew to Aruba to search for her. Upon arriving, Elizabeth was able to find out more information than the police did, as the authorities seemed uninterested in starting a search. The police told Elizabeth that cases like this are not rare, and that people often miss their planes or get lost in bars or with new acquaintances. However, Elizabeth knew her daughter, and was convinced that something was seriously wrong. Natalie Holloway was last seen leaving Carlos and Charlie's nightclub with 17-year-old Jan, a local regular, who had offered her a drink. They left with 2 other young men in a silver Honda car. 4 hours later, Natalie's mother, Elizabeth, contacted the police again with concerning information, leading to the detention of the trio. Initially, Vanda Slot denied knowing Natalie, but later admitted to leaving the bar with her. They drove around, visited the beach, and then dropped her off near the hotel. His friends, Deepak and SES Kalpo, confirmed his account. Natalie was born on October 21, 1986, in Clinton, Mississippi, to Elizabeth Ann and David Edward Holloway. Her parents loved each other dearly, but divorced after 13 years. Natalie and her brother stayed with their mother, but their father remained supportive emotionally and financially. In 2000, Elizabeth remarried to George Twitty, and Natalie moved to Mountain Brook. The move was smooth, and she made new friends easily due to her sociable nature. Her family was devout, attending church every Sunday, which influenced Natalie's upbringing. Relatives remembered her as kind, modest, and beautiful, with a radiant smile. Natalie was an excellent student, engaged in dance, and participated in various clubs. She dreamed of pursuing a career in medicine and had chosen a local university for a substantial scholarship. At the time, she had promising life prospects and was excited about an upcoming trip. Elizabeth believed her daughter was unlikely to trust a stranger or get into a car with him. Surveillance footage from the bar confirmed her suspicions, showing Natalie's behavior changed after drinking a beverage offered by Jan, suggesting she was under the influence of some substance. The staff at Carlos and Charlie spoke well of Natalie, but Vanda Slot had a questionable reputation, often behaving poorly, indulging in gambling, and consuming forbidden substances. He had previously recorded and uploaded videos of his exploits to the internet, but was never held accountable due to his father's influence as a well-known lawyer aiming for a judgeship. The disappearance of Natalie sparked a nationwide search, with the island authorities launching an extensive operation to find her. Volunteers, divers, and specially trained dogs were deployed to cover a vast area. The government even declared a public holiday, and 50 Marines combed the coastline. An airplane equipped with thermal imaging scanned over 40 kilometers of terrain, but Natalie seemed to have vanished into thin air. On June 30th, investigators discovered that there was no footage of Natalie entering a building, which contradicted the statements of Jan and the Kalpo brothers. The police brought them in for questioning again, and this time, the younger Vanda Slot unexpectedly changed his story. He claimed to have dropped Natalie off at a location without surveillance, not near the hotel, and added that he saw a figure in black moving towards her. Hotel security staff who were on duty that night were detained, with investigators suspecting they might have intercepted Natalie on her way. On June 9th, detectives arrested the suspicious trio, and one of the security guards shared a cell with the Kalpo brothers. The guard learned a crucial detail. Sadish confessed that he and Deepak had lied to cover for their friend, leaving Jan alone with Natalie on the beach. The security guards were released on June 13th, and on June 17th, another suspect, Steve Gregory Cruz, a DJ, was detained. The police suspected his involvement in Natalie's disappearance. On June 22nd, Paulus Vanda Slot was brought in for questioning and detained, but he was released on June 26th due to insufficient evidence. Jan offered a third explanation of the events, trying to shift the blame onto the Kalpo brothers, claiming he parted ways with Natalie near his home and she left with them. However, his story was not taken seriously. A lawyer defended Sadish and Deepak, and on July 4th, after a brief trial, the Kalpo brothers were released. Jan Vanda Slot, born on August 6, 1987, in Arnhem, Netherlands, was one of 3 brothers in a large family. He was a good student, excelled in sports, and planned to attend St. Leo University in Florida. Jan's childhood was marked by a strained relationship with his mother, Anita, an art teacher, who considered him an incubator liar. He grew up rebellious, often ran away from home, and fell in with a bad crowd, developing a penchant for gambling. Despite this, he presented himself as cool and fearless to his friends. Locals were suspicious of Jan's lenient attitude, fearing it would lead to trouble. However, he was popular among girls and often took advantage of them. As the investigation into the suspects continued, the search for Natalie persisted. U.S. authorities closely monitored the progress and provided substantial financial support. Despite the scrutiny, the Holloway family was desperate to find their daughter alive and announced a monetary reward, which initially started at $50,000. As hope dwindled, the reward increased to $1 million. Additionally, $100,000 was offered for information leading to the location of her remains, which later increased to $250,000. During this time, the investigation hit several dead ends. However, after the reward announcement, new witnesses emerged. One claimed to have seen Jan with the Culpo brothers at a local night spot between 2:30 and 3 a.m. Another witness claimed to have seen several suspicious men hiding a woman's body at a dump on the afternoon of May 30th. However, these statements led the investigation astray, and after numerous checks, their claims were not corroborated. On August 26th, the police detained the Culpo brothers and another young man, but these actions were unrelated to the case. The arrest was more about intimidation and an attempt to get them to talk. Ultimately, on September 3, 2005, all four were released on bail. A week and a half later, the court removed all restrictions and prohibitions, as none provided any substantial leads to the investigation. Jan van der Sloot was detained for 3 months, but after his release, he sought to capitalize on his notoriety by giving interviews and appearing on TV shows. In these appearances, he claimed that Natalie Holloway had flirted with him and offered to have sex. But he declined because he didn't have a condom. However, during one show, he became aggressive and threw a glass at the interviewer. A journalist who was targeted by Jan's glass-throwing incident held a grudge against him and worked with authorities to place a bug in a friend's car. The bug captured Jan confessing to witnessing Natalie's death. He claimed that they had sex on the beach, but afterward, she began shaking, lost consciousness, and eventually died. Jan and a friend then disposed of her body at sea. Despite this confession, Jan managed to avoid consequences by denying the statement on another TV show, claiming he had only told his friend what he wanted to hear. In 2007, Jan released a book, The Case of Natalie Holloway, My Own Account of Her Disappearance in Aruba, in which he presented his side of the story and apologized to Natalie's family. By this time, the official investigation had largely stalled. In 2008, 2 new witnesses came forward. The first reported seeing Jan and his father on the beach around 4 a.m. on the night Natalie went missing. The younger van der Sloot appeared disheveled, and the witness saw him arguing with his father in a car before they drove away. However, Paulus van der Sloot had an alibi for the night in question. The second witness was Jan's former girlfriend, who recalled that Jan had once made a suspicious comment about being able to dispose of someone's body. However, this was not considered a strong lead, given Jan's history of lying and exaggeration. Jan and the Culpo brothers were detained multiple times, but released due to lack of evidence. The Holloway family hired a private investigator who, along with Natalie's father, conducted their own investigation, interviewing locals and searching the landfill. During this time, they uncovered several oversights by the local police, including failure to interview Natalie's classmates or hotel room neighbors. It was also discovered that someone had used Natalie's hotel key several times on the night of her disappearance, and that her mobile phone and toothbrush had been left behind. A male DNA was found on her toothbrush. The investigation ultimately revealed that the Aruban authorities had been negligent in their handling of the case. Jan's father, Paulus, died of a heart attack in 2010, reportedly due to the stress and shame of his son's actions. After his father's death, Jan attempted to blackmail the Holloway family, offering to reveal the truth for $250,000. The family agreed to meet with him and paid an advance of $25,000. During the meeting, Jan provided yet another version of events, claiming that Natalie had resisted his advances, which enraged him, and that he had pushed her, causing her to hit her head and lose consciousness. He then buried her body in a building foundation. However, the police investigation revealed that Jan's claims were false, as the house he pointed to had long been built, and its foundation was fully set at the time of Natalie's disappearance. Jan fled to Peru with the money, but unfortunately, the consequences did not catch up with him immediately. On June 1, 2010, the body of 21-year-old Stephanie Flores Ramirez was discovered in a hotel room in Lima, Peru. She had been severely beaten, and the cause of her death was determined to be a neck fracture. Surveillance cameras quickly helped identify the criminal, and soon after, Jan was arrested and taken to the police station. He explained that he had met Stephanie at a casino, and after playing poker, they decided to continue their acquaintance in his hotel room. However, when Stephanie accessed his laptop and discovered his connection to Natalie Holloway's death, she became frightened and wanted to leave. Jan realized what had alarmed her, became enraged, and struck her until she died. Jan was captured on his way to Chile and confessed to the crime on the 4th day of his arrest. The news shocked residents in the US, especially as it occurred exactly 5 years after Natalie's disappearance. Elizabeth Twitty expressed her grief, noting that justice had finally been served, albeit at the cost of another life. Jan was sentenced to 28 years in prison on January 11, 2012, for the premeditated crime against Stephanie Flores Ramirez. He was also ordered to pay $75,000 in compensation to the Ramirez family. In 2014, Jan was transferred from Pedras Gordas prison to Chalet-Pala prison, where he met a Peruvian woman who visited another inmate in 2010. They got married, but it turned out Jan was using her for his own purposes. He showed no signs of remorse or guilt for his actions. Meanwhile, in June 2011, David Holloway filed a petition in an Alabama court to have his daughter Natalie, who had gone missing in 2005, declared legally deceased. Natalie's mother opposed this, hoping that Jan would confess to the crime and face trial. After a hearing, Judge Alan King ruled in favor of the declaration on January 12, 2012. On June 8, 2023, Jan was extradited to the United States and placed in Hoover City Jail in Alabama. The next day, he was charged with extortion and wire fraud, but he pleaded not guilty. However, on October 18, 2023, he entered a plea agreement admitting to murdering Natalie Holloway. He confessed to fatally bludgeoning her with a cinder block on May 30, 2005, and disposing of her body in the ocean for sharks to consume. Unfortunately, the confession made as part of the plea deal could not be used in court. Jan was sentenced to 20 years, which would run concurrently with his prison term in Peru. Natalie Holloway's disappearance remains one of the most notorious missing person cases in the US, and it is still an open case in Aruba. A series of cover-ups, corrupt deals, and bureaucratic delays effectively allowed the murder of an innocent young woman to go unpunished, despite global attention to the investigation. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sierra Lamar. Sierra was born on October 19, 1996, with an older sister Danielle, who was about 4 years older. Despite their comfortable upbringing, the sisters experienced a traumatic incident when they were younger. Their father, Steve, engaged in inappropriate sexual behavior with a classmate during a sleepover. When the truth was discovered, Steve pleaded no contest to indecent actions with a child and was sentenced to 1 year in prison. This revelation devastated the family, ultimately leading to Steve and Sierra's mother, Marlene, ending their relationship. After the breakup, Marlene started dating a new man. Meanwhile, Sierra and Danielle attended Washington High School, where they were socially active and performed moderately well academically. Sierra was known for her happy-go-lucky personality, being fun-loving, vivacious, and kind. She enjoyed participating in dance competitions and cheering. Marlene moved from Fremont to Morgan Hill, a city 40 miles southwest, with Sierra and Rick Gardner, her boyfriend, in October 2011. They rented a rural ranch-style home on Pito Hispanic Court, surrounded by agricultural land. Rick worked in construction, but money was still tight despite his business improving. Sierra was unhappy about leaving her friends and hobbies behind, starting anew in a place where she knew no one. At Washington High, she was well-liked, but at SA High School, she didn't receive the same warm welcome. However, with time, Sierra settled in, made friends, earned her peers' respect, and even rejoined the cheerleading squad. By March 2012, Sierra had adapted to her new surroundings. On March 11th, she called her Fremont-based parents to give them an update. The conversation was largely positive. She was excited about an upcoming school assignment, wanted to dye her hair on her next Fremont visit, and discussed her homework with her sister. Sierra was doing well academically and ended her chat with Danielle and Steve on Thursday evening, promising to talk to them again soon, unaware that it would be their last conversation. The next morning, February 16, 2012, began like any other in Morgan Hill. Sierra's family got ready for the day around 6 a.m. Her parents, Rick and Marlene, left for work, and Sierra prepared for school. Before leaving the house, she tweeted a friend at 6:29 a.m. Sierra lived far from her school, SA High School, and had to cross a deserted road between Palm and Dury Avenues to catch the bus. As she walked, she texted a friend at 7:11 a.m. to arrange a meetup before classes started. However, when the bus arrived at 7:15 a.m., Sierra was missing. Sierra's friend didn't show up to meet her, so Sierra skipped class, and possibly even skipped school altogether. Her friends found this weird, but they didn't think it was important enough to tell the school. The day went on as usual. When the school day ended, Marlene, Sierra's mom, contacted Sierra as usual to check in on her. However, Sierra's phone went straight to voicemail, which was unusual. Marlene didn't panic yet, but when she got home and saw that Sierra's room was still empty, she knew something was off. Marlene contacted Steve, Sierra's dad, to see if Sierra was planning to visit him in Fremont, which would have been inconvenient but not alarming. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. When Sierra's friends, including Danielle, didn't hear from her, they all left the same worried messages. Marlene finally called SA High School and discovered that Sierra had missed all her classes. Marlene was frantic, recalling their goodbyes that morning. She said that Sierra had spoken to her, said goodbye, and given her a hug. Everything had seemed fine, and she had told her she loved her. She couldn't believe that she wouldn't contact her friends to let them know she was okay and put them through all that suffering. Officers were immediately sent to Pito Hispanic Court after the authorities were notified, but since Sierra could have disappeared at any moment, there was no specific location for investigators to start their search. They began by questioning those closest to Sierra, including her friends, who were all truthful about the difficult situation Sierra and her family were facing. Although Sierra was typically happy, her mother's recent divorce had forced her to leave her family and old friends behind just a few months prior. The authorities suspected that she might have voluntarily left, given that she often made light-hearted and serious comments about returning to Fremont. Despite the police downplaying Sierra's disappearance, other factors suggested the opposite. Sierra's sudden disappearance was marked by a complete lack of activity. She stopped posting on social media and didn't respond to calls, which went straight to voicemail. Her phone was off, and her loved ones were left with no way to contact her. As a result, a massive search effort was launched to find her. The investigation began 2 days after Sierra vanished, on a Sunday morning. During this time, data forensics experts analyzed her phone's previous activity and made a surprising discovery. In the middle of the night, her phone had briefly turned on, sending a single electrical ping before shutting off again. The phone's coordinates at the time were traced back to a field near Sierra's house at dawn, providing a crucial lead in the case. A search team carefully searched the area where Sierra's phone had last been located and quickly found it near the road. The phone, a Samsung Galaxy, was badly damaged and had clearly been thrown from a vehicle. Investigators determined that Sierra hadn't turned on her phone that evening, but rather the rain had temporarily charged the phone, causing it to send a false signal. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered by sheer luck. The outcome of the investigation hinges on the authorities finding the girl's phone, which was made possible by a raindrop causing a short circuit. Given the circumstances, the detectives were particularly disturbed by the fact that her phone seemed to have been thrown from a moving vehicle, with no signs of footprints, tire tracks, or any other visible evidence. The next day, a search team made a chilling discovery 2 kilometers from Sierra's house. They found her backpack discarded outside a barn, containing her schoolwork, inhaler, and money, items she would have needed for school. It appeared she was forced to abandon her essential belongings. Furthermore, a complete set of clothing, possibly what she was wearing the morning she disappeared, was found in her luggage. This included her pullover pants, socks, shoes, and undergarments. The outfit was sent for DNA testing, which yielded promising results. The DNA analysis revealed the presence of male DNA on her pants, indicating that she was likely assaulted. Following Sierra's disappearance, the search efforts significantly intensified, with a surge in local and international sympathy after her phone and clothing were found. The authorities received over 1,000 new leads and invested more than 7,000 hours into the investigation. A massive search operation was launched, involving over 800 individuals divided into multiple teams. The teams meticulously searched every lake, reservoir, and field in the area, and also combed through abandoned buildings. Sierra's name became a household name, with posters plastered all over the community. Her parents even offered a $10,000 reward for any credible information leading to her discovery. Despite the exhaustive efforts, however, only a golf ball and a flip-flop were found. 12 days after Sierra's disappearance, investigators made a breakthrough in the case. A DNA sample found on her pants was matched to a local man, Antolin Garcia Torres, who lived in the Morgan Hill area. This discovery came after authorities compared the DNA to that of all 57 registered sex offenders living in the same zip code. It's worth noting that Sierra's father, a registered offender himself, voluntarily came forward and shared his prior criminal history with the police shortly after his daughter went missing. He was quickly cleared as a suspect, allowing investigators to focus on other leads. Antolin Garcia Torres, a 21-year-old man, became a person of interest due to the DNA match. At the time, he lived with his mother, pregnant wife, and young daughter at the Maple Leaf RV Park, approximately 7 miles from Sierra's home. Antolin's past is concerning, marked by a difficult upbringing with abuse and neglect. His father was abusive and even threatened to kill Antolin and his mother before being imprisoned for molesting a family member. Unfortunately, Antolin seemed to have inherited his father's harmful behavior. In 2009, he was accused of having sex with a minor, but the charges were dropped. However, his DNA was collected during the investigation. The following year, he was detained for interfering with police operations. The suspicious relationship between Sierra and Antolin raised concerns, leading detectives to keep a close eye on him. Since Antolin was the most likely person to know Sierra's whereabouts, the police took steps to monitor his movements and communication. They tapped his phone, placed a GPS tracker in his car, and even stationed 2 undercover investigators in an RV next to his house to keep him under surveillance. Investigating Antolin's alibi, detectives reviewed security footage from the RV park and neighboring areas on the day of Sierra's disappearance. The footage revealed that Antolin had left the campground in his red Volkswagen Jetta at 7 a.m., which corresponded with the time frame of Sierra's kidnapping, given the short 7-mile distance between his home and Sierra's. Although Antolin claimed to have gone to work, Safeway's records showed he never arrived on March 16th. Further inquiry by his management uncovered disturbing information. 3 attempted kidnappings had occurred in the same Safeway parking lot just 3 years prior, although the perpetrators were never caught. The only evidence from these incidents was a dropped taser with a partial fingerprint on one of its batteries. However, a complete match would require a direct one-to-one comparison. The thought of Antolin being the suspect seemed appealing, but when his fingerprints were matched with those on the taser, the investigators were shocked to discover that he was their man. The evidence was mounting against him. His DNA was found on Sierra's pants, and he had a history of involvement in kidnappings. This was enough to detain him and seize his car for further DNA testing. During the interview, Antolin came across as arrogant, but the test results were damaging. He claimed to have gone fishing on the day Sierra vanished and had no idea who she was. However, the investigators were skeptical of his explanation. What's more, Antolin made a strange admission. He had a disturbing habit of strangling snakes while driving and throwing them out the window. He also admitted to throwing a used tissue out the window in the same spot where Sierra's bag was found on the morning she disappeared. This, combined with the 1 in a million chance of rain on Sierra's phone, made his explanation seem even more implausible. As a result, Antolin Garcia Torres was formally arrested on May 21, 2012, in connection with Sierra Lamar's disappearance, outside his workplace in a Safeway parking lot. Distinct evidence linkages were found between Sierra and Antolin's vehicle. A DNA examination confirmed that Sierra's DNA was present on the rear door's interior door handle. Furthermore, fibers on Sierra's clothing matched those on Antolin's car seats, and a piece of rope in his car contained a hair strand from Sierra. This evidence conclusively proves that Sierra was in Antolin's car at some point. Despite Antolin's arrest, a significant issue remained. Sierra's body had not been found, and her death had not been verified. This raised the question of whether Antolin could be accused of first-degree murder without a body or confirmed death. Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rosson announced on May 19, 2014, that he would seek the death penalty against Antolin. Although Antolin had pleaded not guilty to Sierra's murder, the overwhelming evidence against him left little room for error. After delays, Antolin's trial finally began on January 30, 2017. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother Vicky. She had 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, who looked up to Katrina as a role model. As children, Miranda would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup, admiring her older sister and wanting to be just like her. As the years passed, Katrina and Miranda formed a strong bond, becoming more like best friends than sisters. Katrina grew up in Musney Park, Illinois, a suburban community outside the city, after her parents separated, and she lived with her mother. Those who knew Katrina described her as a kind, fun-loving person who cherished the holiday season and enjoyed giving humorous gifts to her friends and family. She was deeply involved in her church and had a strong desire to help others, always willing to lend a hand to those in need. Despite her happiness, Katrina longed to find love and thought she had found it when she met Todd Smith at a bar when she was 20 years old. Todd, a self-employed financial planner, had 3 daughters and worked from home. He met Katrina, and despite their differences, they clicked. Todd's flexible schedule allowed them to travel frequently. After 3 years together, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned a small wedding in a local park, and Katrina was thrilled about their future. She loved Todd's daughters and was eager to build a life with him. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was an excellent match for Katrina. They trusted him to take care of her and believed the couple was meant to be. After marrying, Katrina and Todd settled in Masney Park and started their new life together. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother and said she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, she mentioned she would visit for dinner on October 24th and had news to share. Vicky suspected that something was amiss, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Before ending their phone call, Vicky promised Katrina that she would cook her favorite meal, chicken and dumplings. Tragically, Vicky would never get the chance to keep that promise. Days later, Katrina vanished, and Vicky would never lay eyes on her again. On October 23rd, at 5 p.m., Todd, Katrina's husband, called 911 to report her disappearance. He told the dispatcher that Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he had been trying to reach her for hours without success. When he drove to the house, he found it empty. Katrina's siblings, Miranda and Chad, were alarmed when they heard the news. Chad, who was undergoing military training in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the evening of the 23rd, a concerned citizen notified the police about an abandoned vehicle near Rock River. The caller reported that the car was not parked on the road, but rather in an easement, suggesting it had been hastily abandoned. When authorities arrived to investigate, they ran the license plate and identified it as belonging to Katrina Smith. Upon inspecting the vehicle, the officer found no signs of a struggle or any trace of Katrina herself. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was adamant that her daughter's disappearance was a clear indication of foul play when she learned that Katrina's car had been abandoned in an unfamiliar area. It was the only logical explanation to Vicky. If Katrina's car was found in that location, someone must have taken her and left the car there. Following the discovery of her car, Katrina's case was officially categorized as a missing person, and the search efforts intensified significantly. On October 12th, at 11 p.m., the police took Todd Smith in for a formal interview at the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he last saw his wife Katrina on October 10th, not October 22nd. He stated that Katrina had come home briefly to do laundry in preparation for a big job interview the following day. According to Todd, while the laundry was in progress, Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase and returned home at 8:30 p.m. Todd reported that Katrina briefly returned home before leaving again to make one last stop. She had told him she needed to complete an errand before returning to the house she was watching for a friend. The next day, after Katrina was declared missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, he broke down in tears as he begged for anyone with information about her whereabouts to come forward. As the search for Katrina continued, search teams composed of officers and volunteers worked tirelessly to find her. They focused their efforts on a nearby park, where Katrina's car had been abandoned, hoping to find evidence or clues about her disappearance. When Katrina's brother Chad arrived in Illinois from his army training in Oklahoma, he joined the search for his missing sister at the park. With his military background, Chad took charge of the search party. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated their efforts to ensure a thorough search. As the search continued, the officers employed a methodical approach, using dogs and walking in straight lines to cover as much ground as possible and detect any potential evidence, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Katrina's mother Vicky focused on spreading awareness about her daughter's disappearance. She posted missing person flyers at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts throughout the town, hoping to reach as many people as possible. Despite her overwhelming grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky was determined to keep searching for Katrina, even if she couldn't participate in the physical search herself. Todd, Katrina's husband, was overcome with emotion during this difficult time. Chad, trying to be supportive, urged Todd to stay strong and focused on finding Katrina. He stood by Todd's side, sympathetic to his brother-in-law's grief. Meanwhile, the police investigation turned up some disturbing clues. An officer found Katrina's purse near her abandoned car, and as he searched further down the road, he discovered more of her belongings, including her cell phone and bloody towels. It was clear that someone had deliberately discarded Katrina's possessions as they drove away from her car. Unfortunately, the police still had no idea where Katrina was, but they feared the worst. The recovered items were sent to the crime lab for analysis, and the police awaited the results with bated breath. As the police searched for clues, they explored every aspect of Katrina's personal life to understand what might have led to her disappearance. They wanted to know if she had any relationships outside her marriage, was involved in gambling or drugs, and what her daily routines were like. To gather this information, they interviewed her friends and family. Everyone they spoke to described Katrina as a kind, responsible person who always put her duties first and avoided anything risky. Her loved ones said she was dedicated to her job and had a strong work ethic. They also reported that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. The people who knew Katrina described her as a loyal partner and a hard worker who always did the right thing. During the investigation into her disappearance, a woman came forward with an interesting clue. She claimed to have seen a blue car, similar to Katrina's, parked on a bridge over Rock River on the night she vanished. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it. Although the witness couldn't describe the person's gender or race, her tip led the police to suspect that Katrina might have been a victim of foul play and ended up in the river. However, they still needed concrete evidence to support this theory. The police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, looking into potential motives and suspects. Despite seeming to have a happy marriage, her husband Todd was still a person of interest. As the authorities knew that hidden conflicts or secrets can exist in any relationship, their inquiry led them to a teenager in town who had previously shown an unhealthy obsession with Katrina. Earlier in the year, Katrina had confided in friends about the boy's behavior, including allegations of voyeurism, such as spying on her through her bedroom window. This had made Katrina increasingly anxious at the time. Although the boy's activities had stopped when he left for college, the police wondered if he might have returned and resumed stalking Katrina. They devoted significant resources to finding him. 3 days into the search, crucial clues were discovered on Katrina's cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab. The phone proved to be a crucial source of evidence for the investigators. By examining Katrina's cell phone records, they uncovered a wealth of information, including her text messages, call logs, pictures, videos, and GPS location data. This information enabled the police to reconstruct a more accurate timeline of Katrina's activities. The investigation revealed that Katrina was having an affair with a co-worker, Guy Gabriel. Initially, they had met after work and developed a connection that eventually turned romantic. However, a background check on Guy Gabriel exposed a troubling history of domestic violence. Additionally, the detectives found text messages in which Guy Gabriel demanded that Katrina leave her husband Todd for him. Given Guy Gabriel's violent past and his messages to Katrina, he became the top suspect in her disappearance. The police suspected that Guy Gabriel might have reacted violently towards Katrina because she refused to leave her husband for him. When Katrina's family discovered her affair with Guy, they were shocked and disbelieving. The seemingly perfect couple, Katrina and Todd, had hidden a dark secret. The news of Katrina's infidelity devastated Todd, who was unaware of the affair until the police investigation. Guy Gabriel was questioned by the police at the station, and although he appeared nervous, he admitted to the affair, but denied any involvement in Katrina's disappearance. He claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During the investigation, the police uncovered an incident that had occurred 2 weeks before Katrina's disappearance. Witnesses reported that a black Volkswagen Jetta had sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, causing a scene during lunchtime. A mysterious driver in a VW Jetta threw a stack of flyers out of the car's sunroof, scattering them among the employees gathered outside. The flyers contained a derogatory remark about Katrina and Guy Gabriel's relationship, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. Meanwhile, the police questioned Katrina's hairstylist, who shared that Katrina had confided in her about feeling unsafe and threatened. Katrina had even considered buying a gun for protection and had become paranoid about being followed. She had gone so far as to take her phone to a store to check for a tracking device, suspecting that someone was monitoring her movements. At the police garage, crime scene investigators searched Katrina's car for clues and used a special chemical called luminol to detect blood. They found a large amount of blood in the trunk. Meanwhile, a firefighter pulled a mysterious object from the water, which turned out to be a severely decomposed female body. The body was difficult to identify due to its condition. At the medical examiner's office, dental experts compared the body's teeth to Katrina Smith's dental records and confirmed that the body belonged to her. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Katrina's family was devastated by the news, and her mother, Vicky, was in disbelief. The police cleared the teenage boy who had been allegedly stalking Katrina as a suspect after verifying his alibi. The police then turned their attention to Guy Gabriel, Katrina's boyfriend outside of her marriage. Guy provided an alibi, claiming he was at work during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder. His managers and co-workers corroborated his alibi, and the police cleared him as a suspect. Although Guy was no longer a suspect, the police asked for his perspective on who may have hurt Katrina. Guy revealed that Katrina's husband, Todd, exhibited controlling behavior and encouraged Katrina to leave her marriage. The police investigated Katrina's marriage and discovered several concerning details, including Katrina's desire to divorce Todd, her meeting with a divorce attorney, and her separation from Todd. The police suspected Todd of being behind the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion grew stronger when they discovered that Todd had test-driven a black Jetta, similar to the car involved in the flyer incident, around the same time it occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her murder and was already in custody, they were shocked and devastated. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, feeling physically ill at the thought that Todd could be responsible for her daughter's murder. The police also discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, providing a potential motive for the crime. Katrina was the sole breadwinner for her family since Todd was unemployed. The police suspected that Todd might have motive to kill his wife, as he would gain access to their funds if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage with brays of blood on it, which led them to believe it might be the murder weapon. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting a bat was used. A DNA test confirmed that the blood on the bat was Katrina's, linking the bat to the crime. The police also found a clean area under the car, which seemed suspicious. Further examination revealed that the bloodstains matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, Todd was arrested and charged with her killing, bringing relief to her family. At his trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Katrina had recently visited a divorce attorney, indicating marital problems. On the night of the murder, Katrina had gone to Todd's house to do laundry for a job interview the next morning. The prosecution alleged that Katrina told Todd their marriage was over, triggering his violent reaction. They claimed that Todd grabbed a baseball bat, killed Katrina in the garage, and then disposed of her body by throwing it off a bridge at Rock River. The jury found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richens. Eric Richens was born on May 13, 1982, and left a lasting impact on those around him. As a child, Eric was passionate about sports, actively participating in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which showcased his athletic talent and enthusiasm for staying active. Eric's true passion, however, was anything that involved being outdoors. He was an exceptional hunter, known for his impressive marksmanship, and had amassed an impressive collection of trophy animals from around the world. With his vibrant personality, Eric had the ability to light up any room he entered, spreading joy and laughter through his storytelling, playful pranks, and contagious laughter. As an adventure seeker, Eric lived life to the fullest in Utah, where he owned a wide range of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles. He loved exploring the outdoors and relishing the thrill of adventure. Despite his love for fun and adventure, Eric was deeply committed to his faith, being a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric's family supported him on a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, he attended the University of Utah, earning a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish in 2009. While working in construction, Eric frequently visited Home Depot, where he met Curry Darden. Over time, they developed a friendly connection, and Eric found himself attracted to her charming personality and beauty. However, he was too shy to approach her directly, so Eric asked a friend to help him get her phone number. One day, while Eric was shopping at Home Depot, his friend discreetly asked Curry for her number, telling her that Eric was interested in getting to know her better. Eric anxiously waited to see if his plan would work. Eric took the next step and called Curry to set up their first in-person meeting, unaware that it would be a life-changing event. As soon as they met, they clicked, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Curry's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was equally impressed by Curry's character and how well she fit with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Curry and accepted her into their family. In 2013, Eric and Curry got married in an intimate ceremony, making their relationship official. After their wedding, Curry gave birth to their first child, Carter, followed by Ashton and then Weston, completing their ideal family. Eric naturally took to being a father, and his boys looked up to him. Eric took great pride in his sons' accomplishments, whether they excelled academically, athletically, or artistically. He consistently showed his support by attending their events and celebrating their successes. Later, Eric established a successful stonemasonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. Clients sought him out for his expertise in creating beautiful stonework. The business provided Eric and his family with financial security. Additionally, Curry, who worked in real estate, contributed to the family's income. Her entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with her knowledge of the local market, made her a valuable asset. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them for a profit. The Richins family enjoyed a wealthy lifestyle, symbolizing the epitome of success. However, their seemingly perfect life came to a sudden end on March 4, 2020, when Curry called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they determined that Eric had already passed away. Devastated, Curry called her mother Lisa, who rushed to be by her side. Curry's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, were present too, overcome with tears and shock. The three of them struggled to come to terms with Eric's passing. Curry recounted that the evening had begun on a happy note, as they celebrated her latest real estate business milestone, the purchase of a luxurious mansion. Before retiring to bed, Curry had even prepared Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, mixing ginger beer with vodka. Curry went to bed around 9 p.m., but ended up sleeping in her 9-year-old son's room because he was having nightmares. Later, around 3 a.m., she returned to the bedroom she shared with Eric. When she touched him, she was alarmed to find him ice cold and unresponsive. Despite trying to wake him, she couldn't rouse him, and knew something was seriously wrong. As she waited for the paramedics to arrive, Curry remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. The paramedics were baffled by Eric's cause of death, speculating that it might have been an aneurysm, given his apparent good health and lack of known medical conditions. However, further investigation revealed that Eric had complained to Corey about chest pains the night before his death, which initially reinforced the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were shocking. Eric's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a highly potent pain medication that can be extremely dangerous and even deadly when taken in excessive amounts. After Eric's death, a critical question remained: how did this substance end up in his system? From the start, Curry and her family quickly blamed Eric's recreational drug use as the reason fentanyl was present. Curry explained that Eric would take a THC-infused gummy every night to relax, as he preferred THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, to unwind. However, Curry, her mother, and brothers had concerns about the origin of these gummies, suspecting that Eric didn't always buy them from trustworthy sources, and instead purchased them illegally. Eric's family strongly disagreed with these claims, believing there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore other possibilities. Despite trying to move on, Curry faced significant challenges, according to her brother Ronnie, as the absence of their husband and father left a huge gap in their lives, leading their 3 sons to act out due to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Corey, grieving and seeking comfort for her children, turned to a creative outlet to cope with her emotions. She wrote and self-published a children's book on Amazon titled Are You With Me?, which aimed to help kids understand and deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a young boy struggling to come to terms with his father's death through illustrations and narrative. In the book, Corey portrayed Eric, her late husband, as a protective angel always watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, praised the book, saying it brought some comfort to Curry and her grandchildren as they navigated their emotions and rebuilt their lives. However, detectives investigating Eric's death soon uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Just weeks after Curry appeared on local Utah news stations promoting her book and sharing her grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023. The community was stunned by the arrest, and the tragic turn of events transformed what was initially a heartwarming story of a grieving wife and mother into an unbelievable tale of betrayal and tragedy. Curry is accused of murdering Eric by poisoning him. Eric's family believes Curry deliberately put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the Moscow Mule she made for him on the night he died. However, Curry's lawyer claims that no fentanyl was found in the glasses at their home. Curry denies any involvement in Eric's death, saying she had no reason to harm him. Her mother, Lisa, was shocked to hear about her daughter's alleged involvement and told investigators that the couple was happy and had no reason to kill each other. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Curry and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as they seemed. The couple had disagreements, and Curry, who had given up her career to be a stay-at-home mom, wanted to be independent. She was also growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. According to Lisa, Eric was unfaithful in his marriage, and he confided in her about the affair along with Curry. To address their marital issues, Eric and Curry sought counseling. However, Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on her. Eric genuinely loved his sons and wanted to save the marriage. Despite his efforts, Eric was preparing for a potential divorce. He set up a secret trust with his sister Katie without revealing his intentions. The investigation uncovered that Eric had 6 life insurance policies worth $3 million. Furthermore, Curry forged Eric's signature on an additional $100,000 policy just 2 months before his death. It was also discovered that Curry allegedly stole money from Eric's personal accounts and misused business funds over several years. Contrary to her claims, Curry's house-flipping business was failing, according to Eric's family representative. Curry's company was deeply in debt, with millions of dollars owed. According to the spokesperson, Curry urgently needed cash, and a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage stated that she would not inherit the business assets if they were to divorce. However, if Eric were to pass away before her during their marriage, the assets would transfer to Curry. The spokesperson's claims were disputed by Curry's attorney, who maintained that the business was not in financial trouble. The attorney explained that the debt was a normal part of the house-flipping business, as it relied on lines of credit that would be repaid once the properties were sold. Curry's attorney clarified that the large debt figure mentioned was simply a result of regular business transactions. Curry's mother, Lisa, recalled that Eric had been supportive of Curry's business ventures, particularly when they bought the mansion where they were celebrating on the night of his death. In Heber Valley, Utah, a 10-acre estate with a mansion sat vacant since its construction in 2017, despite being close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. This prime location offered endless opportunities for outdoor recreation. Curry, with the help of investors, bought the mansion with plans to renovate and transform it into a recreational hub. Her goal was to sell the property at a significant profit. After consulting an accountant, Curry and Eric discovered that they could potentially make a $12 million profit from the sale of the property, a substantial return on the initial $3 million investment. However, there's a discrepancy in Eric's involvement. While he seems to be on board with the purchase, his family claims he was against it and had a heated argument with Curry about buying the mansion. Eric's family spokesperson claims that Curry gave Eric a drink containing fentanyl on the night of his death, and they believe this was not Curry's first attempt to harm Eric. They allege that in 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after Curry gave him a drink, but Curry's brother Ronnie denies this, saying Eric was mistakenly given an alcoholic drink by a bartender while taking antibiotics. Eric's family also claims that Curry tried to kill Eric again on Valentine's Day 2022, a month before his death, when she brought him a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and struggle to breathe. After Eric's death, Curry's behavior was questioned, including an incident where she allegedly attacked her sister Amy when she tried to open a safe containing a large amount of cash. Curry claimed she was defending herself to retrieve important documents, but was charged with assault and pleaded no contest in June 2023. Curry appeared in court for a 4-hour bail hearing, during which her attorney tried to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to argue that Curry had poisoned her husband. One of the witnesses, a cell phone expert, testified about Google searches found on Curry's phone, including queries about retrieving deleted iPhone messages, FBI's ability to find deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Curry's attorney countered that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Curry sought answers to the accusations against her. The prosecution also questioned the lead detective about potential sources Curry might have used to obtain the drugs that killed Eric. According to the detective, a woman named Carmen Labba, who claimed to work as a cleaner for Curry's business and home, told investigators about a meeting that took place in early 2022. During a call, Curry asked Carmen to buy fentanyl pills for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation, agreed to the request. She later told detectives that she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and met with Curry to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. Around the same time, court documents suggest Curry tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. Carmen also told detectives that Curry contacted her again, looking for even stronger drugs. She said Curry paid her with a check this time. Specifically, Carmen claimed that Curry wrote her a check for $1,300 about a week after Eric's death. However, Curry's attorney questioned whether the check could have been payment for cleaning services instead, and the detective acknowledged that this was possible. Corey's lawyer tried to discredit Carmen by pointing out her criminal history, including 4 first-degree felonies, and suggesting that she might not be a trustworthy witness. The lawyer claimed that Carmen may have been coerced into saying she sold drugs to avoid a long prison sentence, as the detective allegedly told her she would face serious consequences if she didn't cooperate. The lawyer also asked if there was any physical evidence to prove Carmen had bought drugs. The detective admitted that they found no text messages showing Corey asking Carmen for drugs, and no witnesses came forward to confirm they had seen the exchange. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge, expressing her family's distress over Eric's death, and their fear that if Corey was released on bail, he would cause them further pain. Eric's sister asked the judge to keep Corey in custody, and the judge accepted her request. Meanwhile, Corey's family was upset because Corey was not allowed to leave jail before her trial and would have to stay there. They believed that Corey's time in jail was affecting her mental and physical health. In 2023, something serious happened to Corey while she was taking medicine given to her by the jail officials. She had a seizure and was quickly taken to the hospital from the jail. While Corey was in jail, she claimed that the officials gave her the wrong medication, which caused her to experience adverse effects. Fortunately, she recovered after being treated at a hospital. During her hospital stay, jail officials found a handwritten, unsent letter in her cell. They filed it into court records, claiming it was a note from Curry to her mother. Prosecutors argued that this letter provided additional evidence of Curry's intentions and motivations. In November 2023, they requested a no-contact order to restrict Curry's access to her mother and brothers, mainly due to the letter. Prosecutors claimed that the letter was evidence of witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the letter instructed Corey's mother on how her brother Ronnie should testify in court. Specifically, Curry allegedly wanted Ronnie to claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills containing fentanyl from Mexico during his trip abroad. The letter also instructed Ronnie to obtain text messages from Eric discussing his drug use. Curry stressed the need to link Eric's Mexico activities to his alleged drug involvement. Despite this, she vehemently denied accusations that a letter was an attempt to tamper with witnesses, claiming it was a work of fiction she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge ruled in her favor, as the prosecution failed to prove witness tampering. Currently, Corey and Eric's family are fighting for custody of their 3 sons, who are living with one of Eric's relatives. Although Corey is in jail, she still gets to see her sons through twice-weekly video calls. While her family has not been allowed private visits with the children, they regularly attend their sports events and practices, which are open to the public. If convicted of poisoning her husband Eric with fentanyl, Corey faces a sentence of 25 years to life. Multiple civil lawsuits have been filed against Corey, all related to Eric's estate. A central issue in these cases is the custody of Eric's children. Eric's family thinks that Corey's family is motivated by a desire to control Eric's assets, as whoever gets custody of the children will also gain control of his money. Corey's trial is scheduled to start in 2025. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh attempted to follow in his family's footsteps by pursuing a law degree from the University of North Carolina, where he met his future wife, Margaret Maggie Branton. They started dating in 1991 and got married 2 years later, on August 14, 1993, at the Second Presbyterian Church in South Carolina. Alex and Maggie had 2 sons, Richard Buster Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh. Alex joined his family's law firm, PMPD, as a personal injury attorney, aiming to continue his family's legacy. However, unlike his ancestors, Alex misused the power and influence his family's firm provided, covering up financial crimes, theft, and possibly even murder. For over a decade, Alex's dishonest dealings went unnoticed until his youngest son, Paul, was involved in a fatal boating accident. This incident was the latest in a series of suspicious deaths surrounding the Murdaugh family, leading people to speculate that these accidents were not coincidental and were instead part of a larger cover-up, given the family's history and resources. Here's what happened on February 23, 2019. Paul Murdaugh, fresh out of high school, took his family's boat to Pucas Island for a party with friends. The group, including his girlfriend Morgan Dowie, Anthony Cook, and Miley Allman, wanted an unsupervised night of fun. They planned a house party and oyster roast on the island. To make the night complete, Paul used his older brother's ID to buy beer and hard liquor. They left the Murdaugh River House around 7 p.m. and continued partying until midnight. Feeling restless, Paul suggested driving the boat to downtown Beaufort, where he and his friend Connor had 2 rounds of shots at around 1 a.m. As they headed back to the boat, a surveillance camera caught a tender moment between Anthony and Mallory. Paul, who was heavily intoxicated, started acting strangely on a boat ride with friends. At 1:15 a.m., the group got back on the water, but things quickly spiraled out of control. Paul drove the boat in circles, showing signs of intoxication, and got into an argument with the others. Anthony wanted to get out on a nearby rock, but Paul refused. GPS footage later showed that the boat's speed increased at some point. Although Paul denied deliberately speeding up, he was in control of the wheel. The boat crashed into Arrow Creek Bridge at 2:20 a.m., throwing Mallory into the water. The others were severely injured. Connor broke his jaw, and Morgan's hand was badly hurt. Connor called 911, and help arrived soon after. When the deputy sheriff arrived, he saw blood in the main compartment and a large split in the hull from the impact. All the teenagers involved were extremely drunk, and everyone except Anthony required hospital treatment. Paul refused treatment despite being extremely agitated and having a blood alcohol level of 0.243, significantly higher than the legal limit. The search for Mallory's body took 8 days, and she was found to have died from a combination of blunt force trauma to the head and drowning. Despite multiple eyewitnesses stating that Paul was out of control while driving the boat, he was not arrested or charged. This led to rumors that Alex Murdaugh had used his influence to protect his son from justice. In March 2019, the Murdaugh family was served with a wrongful death lawsuit. Mallory's family alleged that Paul's mother, Maggie, was aware that her son was drunk when they went boating, and that Buster had helped them obtain fake IDs to buy alcohol. Paul was finally charged with 3 felonies on April 18, 2019, but he never made it to court because he died before his trial. A series of mysterious deaths have been linked to the Murdaugh family. One incident involved Stephen Smith, a gay teenager, who was found dead on July 8, 2015. His official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, and it was initially ruled a hit-and-run incident with no suspect arrested. However, Stephen's mother believed he was the victim of a hate crime. There were rumors that Stephen was in a relationship with Alex Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster, and that Buster might have been involved in Stephen's death. Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh family's longtime housekeeper, died on February 26, 2018, due to complications from a severe head injury. Alex Murdaugh claimed that his dogs had caused her to trip and fall, but there was no autopsy to confirm this account. The case was reopened on March 22, 2023, and it was revealed that Gloria's death was actually a murder, although no suspects have been named. Alex Murdaugh's family was involved in a wrongful death lawsuit after his housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, died in 2018. The lawsuit resulted in a $4.3 million insurance policy settlement, but the money never reached Satterfield's sons. Instead, Murdaugh allegedly conspired with his friend Corey Fleming, a lawyer and godfather to one of Murdaugh's sons, to steal the payout. The money was diverted to Murdo's bank account, and the Satterfield family was never notified. Satterfield's sons filed a new civil lawsuit against Murdo in September 2021. On the same day, state investigators opened a criminal investigation into Satterfield's death, citing inconsistencies in the coroner's report. The Satterfield family allowed authorities to exhume Satterfield's body for further investigation. Meanwhile, Murdo was facing numerous financial and embezzlement charges. He was allegedly involved in a money laundering and painkiller ring with his distant cousin Curtis Smith, which lasted from 2013 to 2021. On September 4, 2021, Murdo orchestrated a scheme in which Smith shot him in an attempt to collect a $10 million life insurance policy. However, the bullet only caused superficial injuries, and Murdo was able to call 911 himself. Days later, Murdo confessed to the scheme and was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. He surrendered himself and was taken into custody. 2 days later, he announced his resignation from his family's law firm and entered rehab. However, it was soon revealed that Murdo had misappropriated $792,000 from his law firm. His law license was indefinitely suspended in September 2021. Investigators continued to uncover numerous financial crimes, tax evasions, and embezzlements committed by Murdo. After leaving rehab, Murdo was arrested again and charged with 2 felony counts of obtaining property by false pretenses. He was denied bond and later indicted on 27 counts of financial misconduct, accused of stealing money from clients, lawyers, and the Satterfield family. Alex Murdo faced additional charges on December 9, 2021, with 21 new counts added to the existing 27, bringing the total to 48. The charges included forgery, money laundering, computer crimes, breach of trust, and obtaining signature or property by false pretenses. It was estimated that Murdo had stolen over $6.2 million from his victims. The state's investigation into his business dealings took months, with new charges emerging almost daily. By June 2022, the charges against him had risen to 81, and by the time he was formally disbarred on July 13, 2022, he faced 84 criminal charges and 11 lawsuits. One of the victims' mothers filed a legal claim against the estates of Margaret and Paul Murdo, raising questions about the character of the once prominent attorney. Could he be hiding something even more sinister, such as the murder of his wife and son? What could have been his motive? The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLAD, revisited the double murder case, considering new information gathered during the investigation into Murdo's financial crimes. They discovered that Alex and Maggie Murdo's marriage was troubled, and Maggie was living apart from her husband at their beach home on Edisto Island. Maggie's sister, Marion Proctor, told law enforcement that Maggie had not planned to see Alex on the night of the murders. Alex had asked Maggie to meet him at the family's hunting lodge, where she and her younger son were later found shot dead near the dog kennels. Alex claimed to have taken a long nap before leaving to visit his ailing mother, who suffered from dementia. He stated that he was away for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and found his wife and son dead upon his return. However, law enforcement suspected that Alex's timeline was questionable and lacked a clear motive for the murders. The investigation revealed that weeks before the murder, the state grand jury had subpoenaed Alex Murdo's finances, which threatened to expose his financial wrongdoings. Additionally, his law firm had discovered his misappropriation of company funds, and he was confronted about it on June 7, 2021, the day of the murder. State authorities believed that the financial pressure had pushed Alex to hatch a plan to divert attention from his crimes and garner sympathy in the public eye. 13 months after the fatal shooting, Alex Murdo was charged with the murders of his wife and son. The prosecutor alleged that Murdo had shot and killed his wife and son at close range with a shotgun and an AR-style rifle. The murder weapons were never found. Murdo's defense team argued that two shooters were involved due to the different weapons used. Expert witness testimony suggested that the shooter was likely between 5'2" and 5'4" tall, which ruled out Alex Murdaugh as a suspect due to his 6'4" height. However, under cross-examination, the expert admitted that there were other possible explanations for the bullet trajectory beyond the shooter's height. The investigation revealed that Maggie was shot with .300 blackout ammunition from an AR-style rifle, and a box of this ammo was found at the Murdaugh family estate. Prosecutors argued that Alex killed his wife and son to gain sympathy and avoid accountability for his financial crimes. Alex's lawyers countered that this didn't make sense, as it would only shift attention to himself and put him in the spotlight of a murder investigation. Alex was a person of interest from the start of the investigation, but his lawyer claimed he had an ironclad alibi for the night of the murders and no motive to kill his family. Prosecutors presented two videos taken on the night of the murder, which appeared to show Alex wearing different shirts. The Snapchat video taken from Paul's phone showed Alex wearing a blue shirt, while the body cam footage showed him wearing a different shirt. Investigators couldn't find the blue shirt, and prosecutors suggested Alex tried to influence a key witness's account of what he was wearing. Cell phone data and testimony from Alex's mother's caregiver confirmed that Alex was only at his mother's home for 15 to 20 minutes, contradicting his claim of staying for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. The most crucial piece of evidence was a video found on Paul's phone, recorded at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before the murders. The video featured the voices of Paul, Maggie, and Alex, placing Alex at the scene of the crime. This contradicted his previous alibi and confirmed his presence at the dog kennels where the murders occurred. Alex testified that he didn't shoot his wife or son, but admitted to lying about his alibi. Alex Murdaugh changed his story, claiming that his opioid addiction and resulting paranoia led him to lie to law enforcement. However, prosecutors argued that Murdaugh fabricated this excuse after murdering his wife and son. They believed he used his wife's phone to create an alibi by making calls and sending texts, including "Call me, babe," at 9:47 p.m. Phone data showed that Murdaugh's and his wife's phones locked simultaneously, and Alex's phone recorded a sudden increase in steps around the time of the murder. Prosecutors suggested this was evidence of him trying to hide or dispose of evidence, but his lawyers disputed this, pointing out that the step patterns on Alex's phone did not match his wife's. The decisive evidence came from a video recorded at the dog kennels. After deliberating for just 3 hours, the jury found Murdaugh guilty on all counts on March 2, 2023. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Additionally, he received a 5-year sentence for possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Murdaugh pleaded guilty to 22 financial crimes as part of a deal, but maintains his innocence in the murders. He appealed his conviction on March 9, 2023. In a surprise move, his lawyers filed a motion for a new trial, alleging that Rebecca Hill, a court clerk, had engaged in jury tampering. Hill denies the allegations, which include advising jurors to disregard Murdaugh's testimony and other defense evidence, pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict, and misrepresenting critical information to the trial judge. A hearing is scheduled for Murdaugh's lawyers to present evidence and witnesses to support their claim. However, a judge has not yet been assigned to preside over the hearing. With over 100 financial and drug crime charges pending, as well as multiple lawsuits, it is clear that the Alex Murdaugh case is far from over. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Heidi Firkus. Heidi Marie Erickson was born on December 14, 1984, to John and Alinda Erickson, and was the youngest of their 3 children and their only daughter. She was known for her playful and artistic nature, and lived her life to the fullest. After graduating from high school in 2003, she continued her education at the University of Northwestern in Roseville. During this time, She was a regular attendee at Calvary Church in the city, where she had been involved since her early years. It was at Calvary Church that she met Nick Furcus, with whom she shared the role of youth group leaders, serving their community with dedication and passion. Nicholas Furcus was born on February 25, 1983, to Julie and Steve Furcus. He was a driven and ambitious young man who dedicated himself to his work as the director of operations at a reputable carpet cleaning company. Known for his well-rounded personality and strong work ethic, he had found his true match in Heidi, whom he met at their shared place of worship, Calvary Church, in 2005. At the ages of 22 and 20, respectively, Nick and Heidi made the joyful decision to take their relationship to the next level. Surrounded by their loved ones and the familiar walls of the church that had witnessed the blossoming of their love, they exchanged vows, sealing their commitment to each other. To their friends and community, Nick and Heidi's marriage appeared perfect. They shared a love for travel, biking, and their church. They often hosted dinner parties for their loved ones. Heidi had recently started working at a financial firm where her father was employed. Their bond seemed to be growing stronger with time. However, behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding. On the morning of April 25, 2010, Heidi called 911 from her home in St. Paul, Minnesota, reporting a break-in. Only 38 seconds into the call, Heidi yelled no, and a gunshot was heard. 65 seconds later, Nick used Heidi's phone to contact the dispatcher, saying, "Please, someone just broke into my house and shot me and my wife." Nick was overcome with grief, repeatedly crying and begging for help, saying, "Oh my Heidi, my wife is dead, please get here." He also shouted no in despair. When the police arrived, they found Heidi unresponsive on the kitchen floor with a gunshot wound to her back. Nick was beside her, still on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, despite having been shot in the upper left leg. He was extremely upset and told the police that one or two intruders had broken into their home. According to Nick, he had grabbed his shotgun and tried to escape with Heidi through the back door, heading towards their detached garage. However, the intruder managed to take the shotgun from him and shot both Nick and Heidi. Sadly, Heidi was pronounced dead at the scene, her life cut short by the tragic events. Nick, meanwhile, was rushed to the hospital for treatment and was later questioned by the police while still in the hospital. Police asked Nick why he and Heidi left the safety of their bedroom to face the potential danger. Nick explained that they were trying to escape through the back door. After receiving medical treatment for his wounds at the hospital, Nick was released just 3 hours later and was interviewed again at the police station about the incident. At the police station, Nick provided a detailed account of what happened. He recalled watching a movie with Heidi and having a glass of wine before going to bed around midnight. Nick said he woke up around 6:10 to 6:15 a.m. when he heard the screen door open and someone fiddling with the doorknob. The investigators questioned Nick about locking the deadbolt, and he admitted that he and Heidi usually made sure to lock it, but he believed he had forgotten to do so that particular night. After hearing the noises, Nick retrieved his shotgun from the upstairs closet, which he had brought up from the basement a month ago because he noticed it was starting to rust. Although the shotgun was initially empty, Nick loaded it when he heard the noises. He then woke up Heidi, instructed her to call 911, and told her to leave the house and go to the garage where their cars were parked. Nick also shared that he and Heidi had a safety plan in place in case of trouble, which was to go to the garage where their cars were parked. Nick, who is right-handed, was holding a pair of jeans in his right hand and a shotgun in his left hand as he walked behind Heidi toward the garage. They stopped at the front door, where Heidi retrieved her wallet from a table. Suddenly, the door burst open and a tall, dark-skinned man rushed in. The intruder wore a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled tightly around his face. Nick dropped the jeans, and the intruder grabbed the shotgun barrel. The two men then engaged in a physical struggle. During the altercation, the gun fired, and Nick said his finger accidentally slipped onto the trigger. He believed he hit Heidi in the back, causing her to collapse immediately. They continued fighting over the shotgun, which fired again, hitting Nick in the upper thigh and causing him to fall to the ground. The intruder then fled out the front door. Nick told investigators that Heidi was unresponsive, and he eventually lost consciousness. Nick told the police that his house was supposed to be foreclosed the next day, and he and his partner Heidi had planned to inform their parents and friends about their situation on the same day. According to Nick, they had fallen behind on their bills, and their house had been foreclosed on and sold to someone else. As a result, they were required to vacate the premises, but they hadn't shared this information with anyone. Their plan was to pack up their belongings on Sunday and Monday morning, leaving some items in the garage to collect later, and then find someone to stay with temporarily. However, their plans were disrupted, and their peaceful home was left with an air of tragedy. The lives of Nick and Heidi were forever changed by the devastating events of that morning. The investigation continued, with law enforcement securing the area and interviewing residents. None of the neighbors reported seeing anyone leaving the Furcus residence. However, one neighbor, Brendan O'Connell, who was looking after kittens in a nearby house, told the authorities that he heard an argument followed by gunfire. Nick begged for mercy, claiming a shooter had attacked him and a woman. After talking to police, Nick's lawyer hired an artist to update the sketch, details emerging: an African-American male, 40 to 60 years old. The police initially searched for an unknown African-American male intruder based on Nick's description, but found no evidence or witnesses to support his story. Despite a thorough investigation, no one was arrested or charged in connection with Heidi's death, leaving the case unsolved for many years. Years later, a surprising revelation came to light. Over 10 years had passed since Heidi's murder, and Nick had seemingly moved on with his life, marrying Rachel and starting a family. However, when financial troubles resurfaced, Rachel began to suspect that Nick was hiding something. Rachel's concerns about their financial situation and Nick's evasiveness sparked her curiosity, prompting her to investigate Nick's past. As she dug deeper, she uncovered secrets and inconsistencies that made her question everything she thought she knew about her husband and his possible involvement in Heidi's death. Rachel was unaware of the financial troubles her husband Nick was hiding, similar to those he had faced with his previous wife Heidi years earlier. Her concerns prompted her to contact the authorities, which renewed interest in Heidi's murder case. Investigators began looking into Nick's second marriage to Rachel, whom he married in 2012. However, by the time Rachel spoke with the authorities, she had already divorced Nick due to his growing financial problems. Before their 2019 divorce, Rachel had recorded a conversation where she confronted Nick about his deception. She told investigators that Nick was repeating the same patterns he had with Heidi, including failing to pay property taxes. In fact, she had seen a letter warning that they would be evicted by 2020 if the taxes weren't paid. Rachel's decision to contact the police with her suspicions set off a chain of events that would once again bring the Heidi Fergus murder case into the spotlight. Sergeant Nicole Sipes, assigned to the case, listened carefully to Rachel's concerns and began re-examining the evidence. Sergeant Nicole Sykes of the St. Paul Police Department was determined to solve Heidi's murder. To uncover the truth, she made a bold decision to ask the FBI to analyze the 911 call audio recordings. She hoped to find crucial clues that could explain what happened on the night of the murder. The FBI's analysis yielded a surprising result. It found no evidence of a third person being present during the incident. This discovery contradicted the husband's earlier statement to the police, leaving Sergeant Sipes and her team puzzled. If only Heidi and her husband were in the house, what led to her death? The absence of a third person increased suspicion around the husband's possible involvement in the crime. Sergeant Sipes was more determined than ever to uncover the truth and bring justice to Heidi and her grieving family. The FBI's findings opened up a new avenue of investigation, which Sergeant Sipes was committed to pursuing with increased intensity. The investigators obtained financial documents that disputed Nicholas Fergus's earlier statements, further implicating him in Heidi's murder. Fergus's account of the events surrounding Heidi's death kept changing. Initially, he claimed that an intruder took his gun and shot both him and Heidi. Later, he said that the intruder didn't take the gun, but his own finger accidentally pulled the trigger, hitting Heidi in the back. The crime scene investigation yielded no signs of a struggle, such as overturned furniture or marks on the walls, contradicting Fergus's account. Forensic analysis of the scene also disputed Fergus's version of the shooting, particularly the trajectory of the bullet that struck Heidi. Furthermore, Heidi's 911 call made no mention of an intruder, and there was no evidence of a break-in or intruder at the crime scene. This lack of evidence led investigators to suspect that Fergus had planned to cover up his involvement in Heidi's death. As a result, an arrest warrant was issued for Nick Fergus on May 19, 2021, over a decade after Heidi's death. A SWAT team arrested Fergus at his home in Mounds View. The surprise arrest of Nick stemmed from Rachel's suspicions and the tireless efforts of Police Sergeant Nicole Sipes. This sudden development astonished many who thought the case had stalled and would never reach a resolution. As the legal proceedings progressed, the case details would be re-examined, and the truth about that fateful night would gradually emerge. At the trial, Nick Fergus maintained that he was innocent and pleaded not guilty. Many of his family members, including his father, claimed to believe in his innocence, stating that Nick's love for Heidi would have prevented him from committing such a violent act. However, the jury disagreed with their assessment. On February 10, 2023, the jury delivered a shocking verdict after deliberating for 10 hours. They found Nick, the person Heidi trusted most, guilty of her brutal murder. This outcome left everyone who knew Heidi in a state of shock and disbelief. The prosecution built a strong case against Nick by showing that he was facing severe financial difficulties, which they argued led him to kill Heidi to avoid shame and conflict. They questioned the truth of Nick's claim that a home invader was responsible, suggesting that he fabricated the story to divert attention from himself. The prosecution presented convincing evidence, including the lack of signs of forced entry and inconsistencies in Nick's account. Notably, there was no DNA or physical evidence to support the presence of an intruder, which raised serious doubts about Nick's story. Prosecutor Rachel Craker argued that Nick's inability to accept the truth of his financial deception led him to commit a shocking crime, sacrificing Heidi's life to preserve his reputation. In contrast, Nick's defense attorney, Robert Richmond, countered that it didn't make sense for Nick's financial problems to suddenly drive him to murder. Nick claimed that killing his wife would somehow boost his reputation, but this statement is illogical. After intense debates during the trial, the jury finally reached a verdict that would determine whether Nick would be held accountable for Heidi's death. The jury carefully considered the evidence, emotional testimonies, and legal arguments before delivering a unanimous verdict. Nick Fergus was guilty of first-degree murder. On April 13, 2023, the judge handed down the most severe sentence possible: life in prison without parole. Although found guilty, Nick still insists he had nothing to do with Heidi's death. He maintains his innocence even after being sentenced. When he was sentenced, Nick said, "I understand the pain and loss felt by everyone here today. Justice has been served, but it came at a great cost. A broken family, a betrayed community, and a life cut short." The verdict brought a sense of closure to Heidi's family and friends, but it also left them with the painful realization that the man they thought they knew was capable of such a heinous act. So, you must be thinking, where is Nick now? Nick is currently serving his life sentence at the Minnesota Correctional Facility located in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Here's what drove Nick to commit the tragic act. The motive behind the killing remains unclear, but there are clues. In June 2009, Nick received foreclosure papers on their house, which was then sold at a sheriff's auction the same month. 10 months before Heidi's death, eviction proceedings began in February 2010, with a hearing scheduled for March 8, 2010. Nick attended the hearing alone. Initially, the lockout was set for April 9, 2010, but Nick called the attorneys, claiming his grandmother was in the hospital and about to die. He requested the lockout be rescheduled for April 26, 2010. However, investigators found no evidence to support this claim. When questioned, Nick said Heidi was aware of their financial troubles and that they had made plans together to move out of their foreclosed home and start fresh elsewhere. The truth behind a tragic event was finally revealed by prosecutors. A husband, Nick, had been hiding their severe financial struggles from his wife, Heidi. Tragically, before she could discover the truth, he took her life. Instead of being honest with his wife and working together to find a solution, Nick chose a devastating path. According to prosecutors, Nick's motive for killing his wife was his shame and fear of revealing their financial problems, which included $118,000 in credit card debt and 22 months of late mortgage payments. By killing Heidi, Nick avoided confronting the consequences of his own deception. In the end, justice was served, but Heidi's loved ones still suffered immense pain and loss. Unfortunately, no legal punishment could undo the harm or bring back the vibrant life that was cruelly taken. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Chad Durman. Chad Durman, a 32-year-old man from Claremont County, Ohio, was married to 34-year-old Laura. They had a blended family with 3 young sons, Hunter 4, Clayton 3, and Chase 7, and a teenage stepdaughter, Alexis 16. Laura stayed at home to care for the children while Chad worked to support the family. On June 15, 2023, Chad arrived home from work earlier than usual and suggested taking a nap with his family. He invited Laura and their 3 sons to join him in their bedroom, where they spent some time laughing and chatting together. However, this joyful moment would soon turn into a horrific tragedy. After a few minutes, Chad got up and opened the gun safe next to their bed. He retrieved a MAR model HC-22 rifle, loaded it, and shot his 4-year-old son Hunter twice. The sound of the gunshot was heard by Alexis, who was watching TV in the family room. She rushed to the bedroom to see what had happened. As Alexis reached the doorway, she was met with a horrific scene, her brother being shot. Overcome with terror, she turned and fled as fast as possible. Meanwhile, Laura, who was with her kids, rushed to help her son Hunter, who had been injured. She yelled at the other children to run for their lives. Alexis saw the eldest boy fleeing in the wrong direction, towards a field, and shouted at him to keep running. Chad, however, was hot on his heels, and soon shot his own 7-year-old son, Clayton. As Clayton fell to the ground, bleeding severely, Chad stood over him, seemingly triumphant. Alexis witnessed this horror and was paralyzed with fear. She then turned and ran back into the house, grabbed her youngest brother, and fled to safety, desperate to save their lives. Chad pursued her, caught up, and pointed his gun at her, demanding that she hand over the 3-year-old, Chase. Alexis begged and pleaded with Chad to spare her life, but he tried to shoot her in the head, only to find he had run out of bullets. Alexis took advantage of the reprieve and escaped to the nearby fire station, where she frantically stopped a passerby to get help. At 4:15 p.m., a girl called 911 to report that her stepfather had killed everyone in her house. The police arrived at the scene 10 minutes later, at 4:25 p.m., and found Chad sitting on the porch with a rifle beside him. They quickly arrested him and placed him in handcuffs. Despite the chaos, Chad remained calm and didn't resist arrest. Meanwhile, his stepdaughter Laura was taken to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center to receive treatment for her injuries. Fortunately, Chad's stepdaughter Alexis had managed to escape from the house earlier that day, avoiding the fate of her 3 brothers, who were tragically killed by her stepfather. Chad was officially arrested at 4:27 p.m. on June 15, 2023. When the police took Chad into custody, he showed no signs of distress or remorse, instead behaving politely as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. He was later taken to jail for further questioning and investigation. During the interrogation, Chad confessed to police that he had been planning the murders since October 2022. Chad told investigators that he had gone without sleep for 3 to 4 days because the idea of harming his own sons was too much to bear. This admission provided a disturbing glimpse into his state of mind in the days leading up to the tragedy. Investigators also looked into whether Chad had a history of aggressive behavior. Chad's phone records were reviewed as part of the investigation, which revealed that he had a history of traffic violations in Claremont County, with one exception, a criminal damage incident that occurred when he was 18 years old. Additionally, a 2010 domestic violence case was discovered, in which Chad was accused of choking his father, Keith Derman. However, the case was eventually dropped due to Keith Derman's failure to appear in court as a witness for the prosecution. These records provided valuable insight into Chad's legal history and past dealings with law enforcement in the county. Meanwhile, one of Chad's neighbors, Richard Kanan, told a news channel that Chad was angry on a daily basis. The woman who called 911 also gave an interview to the news channel, describing how she was running with her little black lab and frantically screaming, "Call 911, call 911" during the incident. Chad's property tax records show that he was up to date with his payments until 2023, suggesting that he was not experiencing financial difficulties with his mortgage. When questioned by detectives, his 59-year-old father, Keith Derman, was left stunned and struggling to come to terms with the news. "I'm still trying to understand," he said. Keith Derman expressed his disbelief that his son could commit such a heinous crime. He also hinted that Chad was struggling with personal issues that had become too much to handle. The community was deeply shocked by the news of the killings, with neighbors expressing their surprise and stating that they never would have expected such actions from Chad. Initially, Chad confessed to the crimes during his interrogation, pleading guilty to all charges. However, during his first court hearing on June 23, 2023, he changed his plea to not guilty. At a subsequent hearing on the same day, Chad appeared visibly distraught, wearing a green bulletproof vest and breaking down in tears as prosecutors detailed the horrific events of June 15. The judge described the case as an act of unimaginable cruelty. The father, who stands before the court, intentionally murdered his 3 young sons, aged 3, 4, and 7, in his own home using a rifle. The chief prosecutor revealed that Chad meticulously planned the events, reflecting a disturbing premeditation. One of his sons attempted to escape by running away in a nearby field, but Chad chased and caught the boy, dragging him back to the yard where he was subsequently killed alongside his brothers. The trauma inflicted by this man on his family, the community, law enforcement, first responders, and society at large is unfathomable. While there has been a full admission of guilt, the case is still unfolding, and the full extent of the facts is still being discovered. However, the sheer horror of what is known so far is almost impossible to comprehend. Chad's murder of his own sons is one of the most horrific, craven, and cowardly acts imaginable. According to the detailed bill of particulars filed in Claremont County, the judge was presented with a disturbing account of the events. The prosecutor read aloud the sequence of incidents that led to the tragedy. Chad deliberately planned and executed the killings, lining up his sons and shooting them. When their mother attempted to intervene, Chad shot her in the hand. The prosecutor revealed that Chad fired a total of 9 shots, causing devastating harm. One boy was hit once, while the other 2 were each struck 4 times. The prosecutor, Mark T.L., emphasized the brutality of Chad's actions, stating that the brutal killings left the family and community in a state of shock. Prosecutor Mark Talvey revealed that Chad Dorman confessed to the murder, saying, "I did it. Take me to jail. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have shot them." During the interrogation, Chad also pleaded guilty. As a result, Talvey is seeking the death penalty. In a statement to the media after the court hearing, Talvey expressed his outrage, calling the crime the most sickening and horrifying he has seen. He imagined the terror the victims felt as their father, who was supposed to protect them, murdered them. Talvey vowed to do everything in his power to ensure Chad Dorman spends the rest of his life in prison. He began by offering his deepest sympathy to the family for their unspeakable tragedy. Chad Dorman is accused of committing a horrific act of violence against his own family, resulting in the tragic deaths of his 3 young sons, Hunter, Clayton, and Chase. He faces 21 charges, including 9 counts of aggravated murder, 8 counts of kidnapping, and 4 counts of felonious assault, which could lead to the death penalty if convicted. The grand jury has indicted Dorman on these charges, and he is currently being held in the Claremont County Jail with a bail set at $20 million, the highest in the county's history. Dorman's lawyer has entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming that he was suffering from a serious mental illness at the time of the killings. The lawyer argues that executing someone with a serious mental illness is cruel and unusual punishment, violating both the Ohio and U.S. constitutions. The prosecution has requested a mental evaluation, and a court date has been set for May 3, 2024, to discuss the lawyer's request. The defense has agreed to provide a report from a mental health expert by June 3, 2024, to support their claim. Meanwhile, a judge has ruled that Dorman's confession will be thrown out due to violations of his Miranda rights during police interrogation. The police failed to fully read him his rights and continued questioning him after he requested an attorney. Several witnesses, including police officers, have testified in court, describing their encounters with Dorman. One officer recalled that Dorman said, "Take me to jail," during the drive to the sheriff's office, while another officer remembered Dorman referencing the Bible during his interrogation, saying that he did not kill his wife. In this case, Chad expressed a desire for a lawyer during the interrogation, but the detective ignored him. When a suspect clearly requests a lawyer during a custodial interrogation, it's not the start of a test, but rather a signal for the officer to stop questioning them. However, Detective Ross failed to cease the questioning and even left Chad alone for a while before returning to continue the interrogation. During the court hearing, it was revealed that Detective Ross did not read Chad his full Miranda rights. When questioned about this, Ross admitted to not reading the rights verbatim, but claimed to have covered the most important parts. However, it was established that Ross had omitted crucial parts of the rights. Ultimately, the judge ruled that the investigators failed to follow proper procedures during Chad's arrest in June 2023, violating his Miranda rights. Chad's lawyers argued that during his 3-hour interrogation, Chad requested a lawyer at least twice, but the detectives disregarded his request and continued questioning him. Additionally, they claimed that Chad's earlier guilty plea was a result of intimidation by the investigators. The judge later ruled that the detectives failed to fully inform Chad of his rights before the interrogation. Thus, any statements made during that time would be inadmissible as evidence in future court proceedings. This ruling significantly impacted the trial, limiting the evidence that could be presented against Chad. The legal complexities and public interest in the case increased, with Chad facing a potential death penalty if convicted. His trial is scheduled to begin on July 8, 2024, but the recent ruling may change the course of the trial. A final court hearing is set for June 14th, just before the anniversary of the tragic events. The trial is expected to last from July 8th to August 2nd. However, the authorities are still unsure about the motive behind Chad's actions. The motive behind Chad's shooting of Clayton, Hunter, and Chase remains unknown, but some people believe it may have been an act of revenge against his 34-year-old wife, whom he suspected of infidelity. However, this motive has not been officially confirmed. Meanwhile, a memorial ride was held today to raise funds for the Dorman boys' family, with hundreds of people participating in the 15-mile ride through New Richmond. The event, which featured motorcycles, jeeps, and cars, attracted over 100 participants and was organized by Alan Easterday. The community came together to show their support for the family during this difficult time, while the boy's father awaits trial for their murder. The accused, Chad Dorman, is being held in custody at Claremont County Jail as the legal case against him continues. Many questions still linger, including what motivated him to commit such a heinous act against his own children. While the community is still searching for answers, they are holding on to hope that justice will be served and the truth will eventually come to light. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rachel O'Reilly. Rachel O'Reilly was verified through phone records. Additionally, it was revealed during the trial that an anonymous letter to Child Protective Services, accusing Rachel of being an abusive mother, was written by Joe's mother at his request. Joe had been trying to discredit his wife, as he knew he would not be granted sole custody of their children in the event of a divorce. However, when social services investigated the claims made in the anonymous letter, they found no evidence to support them. Undeterred, Joe decided to take matters into his own hands. During the trial, he showed no remorse, chatting animatedly with his defense attorneys and even attempting to joke, convinced that he would be acquitted. But in the summer of 2007, the court found Joe guilty and sentenced him to life imprisonment. The lawyers attempted to dispute the decision but were unsuccessful, with all their complaints and appeals being denied. Joe and Nikki's relationship continued even after he was imprisoned. She regularly visited him for many years, but they stopped communicating in 2022 for unknown reasons. Throughout his imprisonment, Joe O'Reilly maintained his innocence. He became a well-behaved inmate, avoiding any issues in the hopes of becoming eligible for parole in the future.